Pretty quick. This takes less than 5 minutes total. Yeah. 1 through 5. So then, Jen and you. No. Good evening. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, September 29th, 2029. We are in the Freeport High School, 2029. I'm just making up. We are now 8 years in the future. Welcome. Yes, our kids have not really progressed much. Okay, let's start again. Wednesday, September 29th, 2021, in the Freeport High School Library. Yes, I got that part right. We do not have Maura with us this evening, as well as our student rep. I know there was an election, so I think we're going to hear the results of that. So we'll get to that in just a bit, but we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the minutes from the September 15th, 2021 meeting as presented, barring any errors or omissions? Folly and Maddie, thank you. All those in favor? None opposed, great. Adjustments to the agenda?
I'm going to request at 7 o'clock sharp that we take 12A, which is the enrollment projection and demographics enhancement by NASDAQ, and do that at 7 o'clock because that's when our presenter will be ready.
And they're joining us, right?
By Zoom.
Oh, okay. All right. All right, so we will move on to good news and recognition. I think Jen is going to be doing the report for the high school.
A little tall this evening. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Jen Gulko, the principal of the high school. Can't lie and say I'm really happy that the school board cookies are back. I saw those earlier. That was the most exciting part. We have lots of good news to share. One is, first and foremost, that we had the elections today for the student representative to the board. We had the most students running for this position ever. We had 8 students running for 2 positions. And we had almost a third of the student body vote, which was wonderful. So happy to share that Brady Grogan is again our 12th grade representative, and our 11th grade representative is Piper Williams, who will be a great addition to the board. So I'm also happy to share and excited that we have started a new group that's called the Student Leadership Committee. This is a little bit different than, we already have student council. We have our class officers. Both of those are elected positions, as is the student representative to the board. This was slightly different in that students for this position applied to be there. And there are 15 students that are a part of this committee who represent all 4 grade levels, which is great. We had our first meeting last week. And the purpose of this group will be to increase student leadership opportunities and voice, and for them to discuss policies, practices, and elements of our school community that impact students and staff, and give feedback and create action steps. So in their very first meeting, they started talking about the cell phone policy and came up with some ideas of the things that they want to talk about, including dress code, and issues tied to equity and inclusion, and some other elements of our school community. So I'm excited about that. It's a wonderful group of students. Also, this week is homecoming, as you may have heard. And so we're really excited to bring back some of our traditions. We have spirit days every day this week. I will say today was probably one of the funniest spirit days I have ever seen in my 21 years of a high school. It was bring your materials to school in anything except a backpack. If you want to see creative thinking, probably 2 students came with a microwave with their books inside it. But we had wheelbarrows and shopping carts and baby carriages and pillowcases and baskets, toolkits, everything you could possibly think of. So we had a lot of laughter today. It was wonderful. We have the outdoor pep rally on Friday. It's our first time doing that outside. We have the dance on Saturday, also our first time doing that outside. The band will be playing on Saturday at the football game. We have athletic events. And then today, an added event that was incredibly special was our 20th year celebration and rededication of the Peace Garden. And so one of our staff members, John Pertek, who's one of our ed techs, did a phenomenal job organizing everything. We had student readings, performances, and then the other thing is that Charlie Mellon and I presented a small Japanese maple tree that we are planting in the Peace Garden in honor of our staff and the dedication that they have shown throughout the pandemic. So we presented that today. So lots of other events. Our performing arts students are getting ready for the musical. Our 9th graders are settling in after about a month. Our Region 10 programs are in full swing. We have a great day coming up. Well, I say great. For some people, it's great. October 13th, the 9th graders hopefully will think it's great. They're all going on college tours. We were really happy that we're able to make that happen. They will be visiting 3 different colleges. I say not great because it's probably not as fun for the 10th and 11th graders who are all taking the PSAT, but very important. And then the 12th graders, some will be taking the SAT or others will be participating in college and career exploration tasks. So it's a busy day, but it's going to be definitely purposeful. Our parent conferences are going to be virtual this year again. They went well last year, but we will offer for families who have a hardship and aren't able to do it virtually that they'll be able to come in person if need be. And so it's a busy and exciting time. We were really challenged with the quarantining at the beginning of the year, and we are just hopeful to get those students back on track and support our students in being healthy and safe and staying in school as much as we can in the months to come. So thank you. It'll be a student talking instead of me next time.
Thanks, Jen. All right, so continuing on in the spirit of good news, we have good news from the Moore Street School. Julie Nickerson.
Thanks. Becky asked us to make sure when we do our goals presentation to include how student voice is present in our schools. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe I will combine that with the good news that's happening at Moore Street. Other than everyone is back and we are glad to be at school having everyone there 5 days a week. I thought I would just kind of give you a flavor of what student voice looks like at Moore Street. And, you know, we're a pre-K2 school, so a lot of the work we do is all the foundational, like, what does this look like when you break it down into teeny bite sizes so that when they go through the grades, students are ready to be able to voice their opinion and really have perspective from others. So that's kind of what I'm going to share with you. I have a couple of videos so that you can really get a sense of what that looks like in the classroom versus me just telling you. So just bear with me while I get this hooked back in. I left my little notes. So first of all, I kind of thought about, I was just going to share, this is what, when I'm thinking about student voice and what it means, this is what I think of. It's the expression of values, opinions, and beliefs and perspectives that lead then to choice and can influence decision making. So when I'm thinking about, okay, how do we set the foundation for that in our school? I think about all of the ways we do that. And the parts I'm going to show you already are all things that are happening already at Moore Street within like the first 4 weeks of school. These things start right from the get-go. So one of the things you've heard me talk a lot about are responsive classroom practices. And I know in a few weeks we're going to be doing a workshop around that for people who haven't heard and understand all of the parts that go into that. And so one of the key parts around responsive classroom is that students have ownership around how the classroom is run, and they share beliefs in how they need to behave and act in order to meet their goals. And so they start with hopes and dreams, which essentially is goal setting. What do you want to accomplish this year? And then they'll drill down to, well, what do we need to do in order to meet those goals as a school community? And so each classroom, you'll see class rules posted that have really been evolved from a process where the children are involved right from the beginning. And so you'll also see that they're written by students to go on the wall, like they have ownership around those, and then teachers can refer back to them if ever there's a problem, and then they'll have a conversation as a whole group around that. We have structures in place in everything we do, and these are structures that you'll see right K through 2, and some of these in pre-K. So we're doing partner work all the time, and we're starting to have conversations in pairs, and then that kind of expands to small group work, and then we'll have class meetings and problem solve different things that come up. Academic choice is present, so you might see that with 2 choices at the beginning of kindergarten, and then that will expand to kind of 3 and 4 choices around. It could be choice in content, and it could be choice in how, like. So for a kindergarten example of that would be, you have to write these sight words. That's not the choice, but the choice is in how you do it. You can build them with magnetic tiles, or you can rainbow write them, like whichever. So we're always trying to have some choice. But the important part about academic choice is the reflection. Why did you make that choice, and how did it help you as a learner? So all of these things are beginning to set that foundational work so that kids can really think about why they're making decisions and why they might make choices to benefit themselves or others. Guided discovery is a similar thing, like you're building up these skills, and children can explore through different materials. Often guided discovery is around material use, an introduction of new things. And then role play is building the confidence and voice. And our classroom libraries are full. We are fortunate enough to have rich libraries in all of our classrooms that children are really driving how they evolve. So depending on who's in front of me in any given year is going to make me think about, okay, what kinds of books am I ordering? What interests am I hearing that children are into this year, so that they can get hooked in different books? And if they're asking for particular things, then we are fortunate enough to be able to order them. And then each year, children are involved in organizing and reorganizing bins based on what they think and how they think they should be categorized. So, and these are happening throughout the year in all of our classrooms. So morning meeting is something that we talk about all the time. It's a key component to responsive classroom. It sets the tone for the day. And it's a time in the day where everyone gets heard. It is where children learn how to speak loudly, how to be heard, how to listen to each other. And I'm going to play you this little example. It's going to just give you an idea of how those skills are built, and you'll watch how the teacher is setting that up so that children are successful in order to be able to do that.
And wish that person a happy Friday.
So there was some, I mean, that's just the first section of morning meeting. It goes on to share and then activity and then a message to segue into the day. But you'll notice what the teacher did. She set up clearly with expectations around how you speak to each other and what respectfully that looks like. And then if you notice, like it would have been really tempting for her to repeat what those first two children said. But that means that the rest of the class don't have to listen to that child, right? So she intentionally kept quiet, even though maybe nobody heard, just to encourage that everybody needs to be listening to each other. So all of those things that you might have not be thinking about were intentional moves by the teacher to encourage the voices of children to be heard by each other. Okay, now I've got to juggle back to my... And then our curriculum has lots of different ways that prepares children to have voice. So our reading curriculum is rich in variety of fiction and nonfiction genres to really kind of set that tone for experience and just learning around different perspectives and things. Our writing sets children up too with narrative, information, and opinion. Opinion is always the way. Oftentimes it becomes like a really big hook. I know when there's an opinion writing unit happening because I always get lots of different letters and different things. And second grade write book reviews, and we've talked about how can we publish these and have them be really purposeful for children to get their voice out. And math is always, key component into what we do is the communication and reasoning, where we're getting students talking about their thinking and why they think a certain way, and that there's no one way to solve a problem, and that there are many different approaches to get to the same end goal. And question and perspective taking is happening in our social studies too. So this was actually a moment that I was like, ooh, like here's another example. Like this might not be happening in every kindergarten class the third week of school as it was for this one. But this is just like a really good example of how all this work comes together. So this class were debating. So the teacher had just finished a read aloud on the Three Billy Goats Graph. So it's part of their emergent storytelling. So they repeat stories that they can retell orally. But the teacher guides them through. I'll show you in a second because it's way better to watch than have me explain. But the teacher really guides them through how she asks them about the troll, and then they are thinking about why they think a particular way. And so this was the third week in kindergarten. So if we can do it there, then, these things are happening across our school all the time. And we thought about how we felt about the little red pen. And then after we thought about that, some of us sat over here, and some of us sat over here, and we had a little debate over what we thought. Well, I'm thinking we could do some of that work again. So here's what I want you to take a quiet minute to think about. I want you to think of whether you think the troll, Lonnie, I want you to think about whether you think that troll is mean, ugly, and scary. Think about what he did. Or do you think he's a sad, lonely troll? Think, don't say it, just think for a minute. This is what you think in your head.
I know.
Remember all the things he did.
I know.
Remember all the things we saw. If you think he's a big, mean, ugly troll, I want you to sit on this side. If you think he's a sad, lonely troll, sit on that side. Go ahead. Remember, do what you think in your brain. And then turn so you can see the other side, please. Turn your body. Turn your body. Okay. So let me make sure I'm right. You friends over here think he's a big, mean, ugly troll, right? You guys think he's a sad, lonely troll. And hungry. Who wants to go first? Asher, go first.
Troll is mean and ugly because you're not coming to tell me to go back there. And also, there's no food, and with that big Billy Goat tail on. I would take him.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Does anybody over here want to say something back?
he looked like. Tell me what he looked like. Say more.
He looked like some hair, and he had a dress set, and he had a chain over to hold his pants up.
Oh, and what does that make you think?
Cute.
That is cute. Okay. Cora?
He was having mommy because no one liked
No one likes them.
him. And he's hungry.
And he's hungry. You do. Anything over here? Lonnie, do you want to say something? What does that make you think? So do you think?
Nothing like segueing to vampires, right? So again, this is the third week of school, and this progresses as the year goes on. Like a lot of these things I've talked about and shown you will look one way at the beginning of the year, and it will look different as the year progresses. So this is Jamie Palmer is the teacher in this classroom, and she is kind of really guiding a lot of that conversation. In a couple of months, she'll be sitting way back and the children will be bouncing off each other, because that's how she'll guide that conversation to go as they build their skills. And it's a longer video than we have time for, but as this ends, a couple of students moved to the other side. So she had kind of facilitated some shifts in thinking based on what they had said. Well, actually, I've changed my mind and go over here. So that's kind of all part of that. The way she'll facilitate those kind of conversations in the classroom. The last thing that I just want to share as a place where children at our level certainly have influence is I can think of 3 kind of big projects we've had at school that are very much student owned, for want of a better phrase. When we did our playground and had our playground design, we started with every child in the school designing a playground that they would want. And of course, there were swimming pools and all kinds of things like that, which, we're not going to take one of those designs, but the designer took all of those away and looked for patterns and trends and themes. And from that determined, they want water. And now, we have a hose outside and kids play with water all the time. And, it's really changed how children play and just really kind of watching and noticing how they shift. But so she took those ideas from them and read into them, they really want to climb. They really want to do these things. And then we were able to have things planted and the sandpit particularly is just such a place that just supports so much creativity and problem solving, because it was all came from students. And then the other thing, we have these murals in our library, and a visiting artist came and did this with us, but this also started with students, and it was actually a partnership between the librarian and the art teacher around, this is your library. What does that mean to you? And what would you want to see to be on our walls? And so then from those ideas, the artist designed these different pieces. And then every child and staff member in the school at the time has done something that contributed to each of those panels. And then this is actually hot off the press and not out for public viewing yet, but this is a mural that is about to go on our brick wall This is the design of a mural that's about to go on our very big, uninviting brick wall at the entrance to Moore Street. That, again, the students designed ideas that the question they were asked was, what does Moore Street mean to you? And then from their drawings, the artist created this, which will be, it's going on panels that will then go on that brick wall on our entrance. So they, it's definitely how they are able to have voice and influence at school. So, yes. Thank you. I'm all done with my good news. Yeah, anyone have any questions? I know I have 1 minute.
I don't have a question, but that makes me want to go back to first and second grade. It looks so fun. And I love how there's no more like sit still. Like I love seeing the kids just move around and the teacher just flows with it. It's just great.
You forget how much 5-year-olds move, like constant move.
I thought that looked pretty good.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Julie. Was that right before snack time? I feel like there was a hungry kid in that group. All right. So we will move on to number 7 on the agenda, which is public comment. Oh, it's 7 o'clock. On the button. Gosh, you're good, Beth. All right. So how are we, like, back to the screen here? Is that how we're doing this?
I'm looking to our tech department to help us out. And our
Have we confirmed
guest
these?
presenter, John Kennedy from NASDAQ, is joining us via Zoom. And he's going to, we're going to be presenting in your pack, you see the enrollment data, but we're also going to try to present it in case we have viewers at home. And so when they give me the thumbs up, we'll get going on this.
So will we see the presenter on the screen too, or will we just
I'm
hear
not
him?
quite sure. I think
Okay.
we're probably
Hello.
going to hear
Okay,
him.
we can hear him.
Yes. Hi,
Can
John.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And I can see myself in the video, but I'm not sure if you can see me.
We cannot see you yet, so just give us a minute. And
Okay.
I'm not sure whether we'll be seeing you or the PowerPoint, but either
Yeah,
way,
it'll
we
probably
need
be
to-
the PowerPoint for the most part anyway.
right. And so right now they're working on that. We just need to give them a minute.
Okay, that sounds good. That was an interesting presentation a moment ago.
Oh, now
Made
you're
me laugh a lot. Very interesting.
so you're now on the screen. Do you want to do an introduction of kind of what
just
you did,
briefly.
John, before we go to your PowerPoint, or would you prefer them to go ahead and put up the very first slide?
Well, they can do, well, why don't I put up the first slide and I can use that and do the introduction, giving you a little background on NASDAQ before we move through.
Okay. And in
There we
the board packets, you did receive a revised report,
Okay,
other than the
all
one.
right.
And I think, can you see that, John, that it's up?
Yep, I can.
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I would also like to take this opportunity to compliment the RSU 5 district for engaging in this demographic enhancement enrollment projection analysis. And it's very important. In updated enrollment projections are always important as districts make key decisions as they go down the road. Before I begin the actual presentation of the PowerPoint that we have here, I want to provide you with just some background information regarding NASDAQ. NASDAQ is the New England School Development Council, as you see on the first slide here. And the organization was formed 75 years ago. And it currently, throughout New England, we have approximately 300 member districts. And many of the districts have been with us, and we're very proud of this, for well over 10 years as members. And that we believe is an indicator that they have been very satisfied with the opportunities that are provided. So the services that we do provide to member districts include annual enrollment projections, demographic enhancements such as this one, and studies related to it, facility capacity analyses and best use studies. And then also we assist districts with strategic planning. And in some cases, we also assist districts with regard to, taking care of any factors that come up that they need to work on with regard to executive searches. So those are the major factors that come into play. And so it's important that we just give you that information. And now on to the RSU number 5 demographic enhancement and the enrollment projection information. And I will present the PowerPoint, and after that has been completed, I'll be very happy to answer any questions that arise with regard to any pieces of the presentation. Okay, so with that information out there, I think we are ready to go to the next slide. Here we go. And this lets you know the team that worked on the project. This is one of our NASDAQ teams, and you can see the members. And Arthur Betancourt is our executive director, and he's involved in all of our projects in terms of just providing guidance, and oftentimes will communicate with district leadership. Next. And now I'm going to provide you with an introduction to this particular project. Next. And the scope of this report, we entered into an agreement with the RSU number 5 district to conduct a demographic enhancement and enrollment projections. And in order to do this, we did an enrollment trend analysis, and we analyzed district and municipal records, as well as data provided by town officials, especially related to current residential permitting. We analyzed HUD data, SOCDS, and we also communicated with local realtors who had been recommended to us by the district. Next. And so with regard to the demographic information, we'll be moving into that right now. Next. And this is one that we always utilize with a demographic study. It's an important factor because it does kind of give an indication of where births have been over the various number of years, extending all the way back to the early 1900s and extending right up through 2017. And the key point with that is that births are a major factor, the primary factor that affects future enrollments. And so what this does show is obviously you can see there the boomers, and they still remain as the largest growth generation of the last, over the last century. And you can also see that economic cycles have had a tendency to impact births. And you can see that since the 2008 recession, births have continued to decline. And there are a couple of factors that come into play here that we will be discussing as we move along further. But it's important to understand that births are a very key factor in the as far as future enrollments go. And it's also important to note in the box there that U.S. births have been down since 2008 and down further in 2018 and 19. And they have tended to be, declining significantly. And one of the factors that's tied to that, which we will be discussing in a few minutes, has to do with the millennial generation, which has been very slow to marry and also slow with regard to births, but they are also getting older. And so that will be a factor that we will be discussing. Okay, next. Let's talk about this district and take a look at this. And this is kind of interesting news. As you can see, the birth data, which comes from the Maine Department of Health and which is used for Maine enrollment projections by them as well, or enrollment info. You can see 2005 to 2008, the average in the district was 133. And then it dropped by only 5 in the average per year for 2009 to 2013, the annual rate. And then as you take a look, you see that it's back to approximately 130. So that's a very key factor because what you're seeing there is births have been consistently in pretty close to the 130 range all the way through, extending back to 2005. So that's a very important factor because obviously it's the number one factor which affects enrollments. Next. Hello? Next. Here we go. No? Next. Are you hearing me?
We can hear you. We just can't see the PowerPoint.
You can't see it?
No, but we have it in front of us.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
Oh.
All right, thanks. That's good then. All right, so let's move to page 8. And that's good. All right, and we talk also about residential growth, national and regional factors. And on the national level, the baby boomer generation has begun turning 65 years of age at a rate of 10,000 a day. So that's a significant number that are reaching retirement age. And that's been going on and will be projected to continue for the next 8 years. And information gained by us indicates that if current home sale prices continue to return to or exceed the levels that existed during 2004 to 2007, which they have already done, many from this age cohort, the boomer cohort, are likely to take advantage of the increased home equity and downsize to smaller homes. And that's a factor that is on the national level, but we are also seeing it in this region as well. And obviously, makes sense. People are looking for more in their savings and accounts, and they are also saying, well, do we really need a 3 or 4 bedroom home? And so many of them are deciding to put their homes on the market, and we are hearing that from local realtors as well. Next. Slide number 9. Okay, and the other generation that is a very large generation, actually the boomers and the millennials make up the largest generations in our country. There is amongst the millennials a pent-up demand and for homes who are planning to raise families. The interesting point about the millennials is they were born between 1981 and 1996. So they're in the 25 to 40 year range now. The interesting thing about them is that they were very, very slow to marry and have been very slow to have children. And therefore, what had happened was there were very few of them several years back that were marrying and buying single family homes. However, as they reach the 30s and some are beginning to enter the 40s, if they are going to be having a family, then obviously the time is present for them to start thinking about that. And so many have been putting off purchasing homes for several years, but now we are seeing on the market, they are entering their mid-30s and they are attempting to purchase homes. However, realtors indicate across the country, and we have seen this from our conversations throughout New England, that inventory of housing that millennials can afford is very tight because housing prices have skyrocketed. And so it is tough for them to get the homes that they are looking for. Next. Now we start to take a look at permit information, which is very important with regard to your communities. And as we see in Pownell, the single family multi-lot Meadowbrook Estates is a 12 single family unit project, and all of the units would be 2 or more bedrooms. Site development has begun, but construction materials are reported to be in short supply. Building construction, at least as of our contact with the town government, had not as of yet started. The town has no condo or apartment permits that were reported. With regard to Durham, the 2 recent factors have come into play. The Truman Day Estates with 13 single family units, all 2 or more bedrooms, and Ruby Lane, 13 units, single family, all 2 or more bedrooms, are both now just very recently under construction. And then when we take a look at Freeport, that's where the greatest growth has been occurring. And as you can see here, Winding Ridge, Baird Landing Phase 2, the CCS subdivision, next. And then all of these, Fletcher property, okay, 6 single families, 4 duplexes, all right, and they are going to eventually, and then Falcon Way, 4 single family units, no construction there yet. Granite Park, 5 single family units, awaiting final paving and landscaping. Beacon Residences is a 144 unit apartment complex with 1 or 2 or 3 bedroom units. And the Beacon Residences are awaiting construction, but they have not moved forward yet with that. So that's an important piece. Habitat for Humanity, there are 3 single family lots that are under construction. Hanscom Woods, 6 lots approved, but no construction as of yet. And Freeport Heights Retirement Community has been on the books for a long, long period of time, extending back to 2010, but there has been no construction moving forward there. But as you can see, there is a significant amount of residential construction taking place within Freeport. Okay, so next. We go to local realtors, and what we learned from the realtors that we talked to. We had Keller Williams and Haggerty Realty were the ones that were recommended. And the understanding is that there has been an uptick in single family existing home demand versus earlier years. And that is to a certain extent tied to what we mentioned about the millennials. And then recently, days on the market, and by recently, I mean since the end of summer, days on the market have increased somewhat, but demand is still very, very strong. And I just want to go on to explain that. The reason that days on the market typically increase with the end of summer and then decrease, in the late spring and early summer is because many parents do not want to purchase a new home if they have school-aged children during the school year and move to a different community. They may move to the same community, but to move to a different community for many parents is a very challenging factor, and many of them do not do that. And that's why we always see a decline in sales volume once the school year starts. That's just an important factor that comes into play. And I think, obviously some people can anticipate what it would have been like to talk to a ninth grader and tell them that you're moving to a different community as they're entering their freshman year or something like that. That it's an upsetting process for many students. But despite the fact that demand is still very strong, as has been the case for a long period of time, inventory is low. And if a property is properly priced, during the summer, in some instances, realtors were reporting that they were getting as many as 30 offers for a property. That has declined significantly, but there are still multiple offers that are occurring. And millennials with or planning to have children. Now, remember, the millennials are many of them are now into their 30s. Most of them are into their 30s and approaching the 40s. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're planning to have children, then this has to be, in many instances, the time frame. And many, as I mentioned, millennials have been putting off purchasing for several years. And so they are definitely the ones who are making the high demands for housing. But the inventory of affordable housing is very, very low. Okay, next. As you can see again, that statement about the inventory. And another factor that's coming into play, many buyers are coming from out of state and are able to work from home if there is internet access. That's a big change that has occurred in the real estate market in all the New England communities. Because people now, many of them, because of the pandemic, were asked to work from home. But now many of them are being told by their employer that they are not going back to the office full time, and many are being told they're not going back at all. They will be working from home. And so as a result of that, many of the workers are deciding, well, if that's the case, let's move out of the city or move away from this place or that place and go to a place that we choose, which has internet access, and we can work from there. The low interest rates that are still in place are a stimulus within the market. That's definitely a case. And then additional information that we received from the realtors, increasing single family home prices are causing an increase in boomer downsizing, which I had mentioned earlier. And there are few condo or apartment units available within your area. Buildable land is in short supply, and realtors were not aware of any major employer in your area either coming or going, which oftentimes can have an impact on real estate growth and population. Okay, next. Next, we get to the enrollment projections. Okay, so let's go to the first part. And the enrollment projections are based upon data and interviews and the most up-to-date information available as of our completion date in August of 2021. We have also checked in with the realtors and the permit folks and checked with them to see what's been happening. There haven't been any major changes that have occurred. However, we think it absolutely makes sense that with regard to the enrollment projections, we will be providing an update, a 2021 October 1 update once that information is available from the school system. And that will help us to make sure that things are okay. And as along with that, there are some things that occurred as a result of the pandemic that we need to check on. So as obviously as districts prepared for this school year, administrators remain sensitive to the changing budget landscape and the uncertainty that the next year or two may bring. But many of the decisions currently being made regarding the start of this school year, which started about 3 weeks ago, the NESDEC report can provide insight into more complex organizational issues that can take several years to implement. And as I said just a moment ago, in the fall, we look forward to providing a revised set of enrollment projections that will be based on the updated data, including the October 1, 21 resident enrollments. Next. Okay, and these factors are important, and they affect the current enrollment projections that we are presenting. One is the firm real estate market that has been confirmed by local realtors. Secondly, and obviously a firm real estate market means, people moving in. Realtor and planning department information indicating that there will continue to be a strong demand for housing, supporting a continuation of the current boom in the residential construction projects, specifically single-family homes. We find single-family homes are the ones that most often are inhabited by families with children. And then you can see strong constant numbers of single-family permits since 2016 and continuing through 2020. That's HUD data. And then student migration into or out of the schools, that's a key factor. And we'll be discussing that a little bit more. And projections for student enrollment based on the current construction and without the recent uptick in residential construction. So we have two different sets of projections, but the slide 19 is the one that is the most important one because that really takes into consideration the current construction, which has an impact. And then another factor, unknown effects of the global pandemic, and we'll talk about that in a moment as well. Okay, next. All right. Now, with this, you can see the historical enrollment. And obviously, I'm not going to read all of these to you, but that would take a long time. But the key point, I think, is to take a look at K through 12 over on the right, top columns there, And you can see that it went from 1792 as a total enrollment in 2005 to 1857 in 2015. Okay, that's the historical enrollment information. And then, 2010-11, and went to 1857 in 2020-2021. All right, so you can see that differential. And you can also notice in the left column the births. Okay, and you can see that over the past, since 2011, the births that were affecting kindergarten and grade 1 enrollments have declined fairly significantly. Okay, and so that's a factor that kind of impacted the last few years with regard to enrollments and sort of an important number that we pay attention to. Okay, so those are the key pieces with regard to historical enrollments, and I'm sorry for that little confusion with regard to referencing dates. Okay, next. Okay, this you can see, I think these are helpful. These are the bar graphs, and they show you how enrollment moved along and how it actually peaked in 2019 and then declined somewhat in 2020. And we'll talk about factors affecting that in a moment. Next. Okay, and then projected enrollments. What's the future look like? So we're now looking at 2020-21 all the way through, if you look at that school year, blue number, to 2030-31. And if you look way off to the right at K through 12, we're looking at a current enrollment of 1857 and a projected final enrollment in 2030-31 of 1999. All right, so enrollments are increasing, and there will be an increase that would be over from 2021. It would be an increase of over 100 students, but 142 total if you look to the bottom there. Okay, so that provides a somewhat different situation, somewhat different than the past decade. All right, and now with regard to this is an important piece. You have that 142 number is important to remember, and that also takes into consideration some of the factors that we had mentioned earlier. Okay, next. Okay, and here you see the increase, and over the course of the next decade, all right, we are only looking at a couple of instances, actually one instance from year to year where enrollments are projected to decline, okay, and that would be 2024, okay, and but beyond that, after that, 25 and all the way through, they're going to be increasing slightly every year, okay. Next. And then this just gives you a look from 2010 to 2030 and how enrollments are moving. Okay, and you can see that over time, they will have increased fairly significantly by over 200. Okay, next. Okay, and then births, which as I mentioned earlier, play a key factor. Births have been increasing to the 150 or so range, and then beginning in 2017 declined. They also were significantly lower during the years from 2011 through 2015. And so there has been a slight uptick in 2018. All right, so, okay, moving on. Okay, now these are just additional data factors, single family approvals, and then going on to multi-unit. And you can see there have been very few multi-unit projects that have been approved and permitted. And then in terms of non-residents in the public schools that are in the non-public schools or parochial schools, very few. Residents in non-public or parochial schools, very few in grades K through 12. All right. And the K through 12 total is only 80 students that are either going to non-public or parochial schools. So that's an important factor. The next one is a very important factor. Take a look at this one down on the left. And it's the number, whoops, back to that. All right. It's the number of students who are homeschooled. And as of 2020, it was 142 students. We are going to take a look at that and get that information from the October 1 numbers so that we can look at that and see if that number has changed somewhat. 142 is a fairly significant number of students being homeschooled, and obviously some of that has to do with the pandemic. And so we want to just check that out and see if there has been any significant change in that number, because obviously most of those students would be coming back into the public schools. And then if you take a look at outplaced special ed, very few in 2020, and choiced out, very few. And then if we take a look at tuitioned in or choiced in, we had, you folks had 19, okay? So that gives us a pretty good look at that additional data. All right, next. All right, and this would be the status quo enrollment in the event that enrollment projection, which did not include the pace of residential construction. But with the residential construction that had been referenced, you know, that is very important, and that adds to the number of students. So if we can go back to the slide that was on, which is probably 6 slides back, we would see the differential. Okay, go a little further. There we are. That's the historical. We're going to go from that. We see, okay, 2021. All right, 2021, we see our enrollments there, 1857, and then go forward another slide, 17, 18, then we go to 19. Okay, and that shows the projected enrollment, and we're showing 142 projected, and we're indicating that 1999 would be the total amount when we get to the 2030-31 school year. So that would be a fairly significant increase of 142. All right, so that takes us pretty much through the key information in the report. And so I want to note that we want to compliment the RSU number 5 school district for commissioning this study And the district is engaged in thoughtful database planning and prudent use of available resources. And obviously, it's important to have a firm grounding in community data and an accurate forecasting of future population and school enrollment. So we hope that this has helped in terms of gaining that information for you. So if you have questions at this point, certainly I would be happy to try to respond to anything that I have available and have knowledge on. And then in the event that it's something that needs additional research on my end, I'd be happy to provide it to you in the near future.
Susanna.
Yes, thank you very much. I had a question that, I don't know, Jen, you may want to elaborate on this as well because we had the same question. But on the slide 23, when you're talking on the additional data, and you highlight that in 2020, there are 142 students that were homeschooled and looking at the influence of the pandemic. And I'm just wondering whether there's some historical data going back several years on that number. Thank you.
I do not have that, but I could get it.
But we have that. I mean, we track that every year in the migration in and out. And I had a question on that slide as well, because I feel like when you and I talked about it, it was 300 and something kids weren't going to school in the district. And this is only showing 260 last year. So
I'm not sure if what Genie tracks, I don't know if it's all captured here. I'd have to look at that.
Okay. That will be important to recheck that. I will, go back and check the numbers that were given to us by the district, and make sure that is that's what we did receive. And it might be helpful if you could have someone in the district just double check to see if the homeschool number of 142 for 2020 is correct, but also check and see what the homeschooled number is for this year, if they have that available yet.
do you just bring every paper known to man with you? You're incredible. Okay, so so this isn't the October 1, 2020 number, because I don't know, she hasn't found it yet in her pile, but I'm sure she will. But this is the, okay. Incredible.
The 142 is what we were told.
Yeah, no, the homeschool number is correct.
Okay.
It's the other ones, and I'm not sure. So we have charter, we have private, we have religious, and we have other public schools. And our number for the 3 towns is totaling 439 kids in 2020, as opposed to this 262. So I'm not sure who's not getting picked up in here. It seems like the categories you have on your chart would pick them up, right? I mean, private school, religious schools, charter, choiced out. Maybe it's, I mean, because we do have kids that are going to other public schools in other districts like Lisbon and Yarmouth, and so maybe those aren't getting picked up in your calculation somewhere. But we're showing 439 kids weren't in RSU 5, lived in RSU 5, but were not going to RSU 5 schools last year.
Okay. Okay. All right. What I'm going to have to do is recheck the numbers that came to us, and then take that total and give it a look. But obviously, we're 220, 250. Yeah, we're not going to be up around that 400 number based on these numbers.
I feel like if something was pulled from Power School, Jenny is just much more of a detective to try to find out where everyone is. So it could be the difference between what she gathers and what is in maybe like Power School or a database.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at just the Waldorf school, there's 78 kids at the Waldorf school. That's almost everybody you have in the non-public, independent and parochial schools. I mean, that's all just at one school, never mind Waynfleet, NYA, all the French school, all the other schools that kids are attending. So So yeah, that just might be something we wanna take a peek at to make sure that
Sure,
we've got
absolutely.
it captured. Was that?
Yeah, we definitely want to make sure we get it right. And so, as I said, we will, tomorrow I'll be in the office and we will check through the information that was sent to us by the district. And then we will, total that. And then if there's something that's missing, we will keep you notified. And so who should I send that to the superintendent?
Yes, that would be great, John.
Okay.
Yep, and then we can share with you what we
Yeah.
track, and then see where the disconnect is.
Okay, that'll be fine. That'll be
And-
fine.
And I think we probably have more questions. Did you have a question, Maddie? Are you good? Vali?
Thank you, John. This is very helpful. One of the reasons why we commissioned this study, and I'm not sure if you know the background to our request to have this study done by you, was to assess the capacity of our buildings as we see the enrollments grow, and we have faced situations where we have had to move programs around from one school to another so we could accommodate students who actually belong based on their grade level at that school.
Mhm.
So what I'm struggling with, even though this information is super helpful, is knowing which of these students are in which building. So what I was really hoping to see in this study was that the enrollments would be conducted by school. So I would like to know, okay, what is the enrollment projection for Pownell Elementary School? And what is that enrollment projection for Durham Community School or any of the Freeport schools? But now, because they're all aggregated into either grade spans or individual grade levels, but they catch students that are currently attending different schools, meaning different buildings. I can't really wrap around my head to know, okay, we have this increased projected enrollment, but where are those students going to go? Is this something that you can do for us? Disaggregate the data so we can actually see the projections for each town?
I can check into that and get back to you. I believe that school by school was done back in the spring in a different project, but I could certainly check into that and see. I think the questions. So you want it in terms of by town and also within a town by school if needed.
Right. I mean, if you do it by town and separate by grade level, we will know which school those students
Yep.
attend. So if you just do all the information for Pownell and their permits issued, and Durham and their permits issued, and Freeport and their permits issued, and do the pre-K through either 5 or 8 or 12, depending on the town, then we will know where students belong, meaning in which building.
Yep.
So if the
Okay.
spring had that, and I don't recall, but if it did have that information broken up by town, it didn't have the information that you just included here about the permits issued. So a
Okay.
combination of those two factors would be what we're after.
Well, when you were referring to the permits, what are you suggesting with that now?
Oh, no, I'm just saying that I'm really happy to see that you have included the permits, the construction permits in this most recent study.
Yes.
So please do include that when you separate by town. So do not exclude that additional information because that is key.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. And who am I speaking to, please?
Oh, and Vali Steverlink.
Okay. All right.
So one of the thoughts, hi John, this is Michelle Richardson. as I was reading through and sort of listening to Vali's question there, none of the percentage increases are huge year to year. So, I'm interested more in, no surprise, the assumptions and the numbers. Because, I'm curious when you guys are looking at, building permits and, building permits have been historically lower than they were, 15 years ago. When you look at your historical information, so what are the assumptions when you say, hey, they're going to build 26 single family homes? What's the assumption of that? Do we assume there's 1.2 kids per home that will end up in the schools? Do we, does it change whether it's a single family house versus a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment? Because that is one of the, major developments that's happening in Freeport, which I don't think we've seen in the past, is a large scale apartment complex with the 144 units. For me, I'm interested in sort of what is the magic behind the math here of, when we're seeing permitting information, or we're seeing at the planning board that there's a large development, what should we be thinking about as board members? Like, what does that equate to? What should we expect as it relates to impact on our schools? Because when I'm just looking at, the historical build permits now versus 15 years ago, I'm not seeing an increase. So in my mind, the percentage changes you have here are pretty reasonable. When you layered your two, comparisons on 19, I think, and 24, the difference over a 10-year span was only 20 kids, which isn't a lot over 6 schools. So, for me, I'm interested in sort of those assumptions and that kind of information, because if we know that, then we can sort of use this data going forward, as opposed to, black box numbers that come to us that are good today, but then as we hear about new things coming, we don't know how to extrapolate.
Right. Well, it's a very complicated process that we use, and in the end, with the process, we develop ratios that we use over the course of a period of time to estimate enrollments. And the ratios vary depending upon the information that we gain from our research. And just to, emphasize that point, and something that I was going to mention anyway, is that the area, the Freeport area, is as you all know, a very attractive area to people who are coming to, summer in a particular location, or visit in a particular location for a period of time. And so that is a factor in the community with regard to sales, construction, and what are the units being constructed going to be used for, and are they going to be used by people who are summering in the community, or coming up on part of the time but not all of the time, and so on. And that's a key factor. One of the things that I did find in my research was that the statistic on households indicated that there were a certain large number, almost over 3,000 households within Freeport, but that approximately 1/3 are not necessarily permanent residents. And so that's a key issue that comes into play in terms of, affecting future growth in terms of schools. Many people may be coming to live in the community permanently, but many others come to live in the community as a vacation area or a, not permanently. And obviously those folks would probably not be having children who would be entering the school district.
And you guys included that sort of information in your, I knew you weren't going to give me the formula, which is fine. I understand. If you did, then people would pay you to do it, but had to try. But, just the fact, sort of the assumptions that you guys use, very similar to what you just said to us, like, hey, we're seeing that you guys have a higher percent than normal number of households that are second homes that wouldn't necessarily have kids coming to the school. So, where seeing these type of construction numbers in a different town, we would expect more kids are going to be coming into your school. But when we layer on this, that's specific to you guys, it's not as much of an impact because of these second homes. I mean, that's the kind of information for me that's helpful for us to think about. So, thank you.
Okay. We'll make sure that, excuse me, that statement gets added.
And any other interesting nuggets like that, we'd love. Jill.
I'm just curious when I'm looking at, when you're looking at the demographics per town, do you take into account when the comprehensive plans are being reviewed in the towns and how that might affect zoning? Because I think, being from Pownell, that's something that I'm always concerned about. Like you said, there's not a lot of buildable land with the current zoning. So do you ever take that into account, looking at the range of years that you have in this study?
We do, and when we speak with the town officials in Pownell, it was we speak to the CEO or the town officials and also the CEO in Durham. When we talk to them, we are always checking to see if there are any major zoning changes that are in the pipeline, and which would lead to increased availability of residential construction. And so we always check that out and make sure that that is not in the case at that time. And in some communities we have seen that they're rezoning certain areas so that they can both be sales, but also include apartments and that type of thing. But we always check that out before we move forward with the government officials.
Any other questions before we let him go?
Do we want him to revise that?
Well, we definitely want him to revise the sheet about the out of district students with what we find.
Okay.
In terms of creating the projections by school, I guess I would be interested in what the cost of that would be as it relates to what's the benefit we're going to get from it. Just so we know. I mean, it might be interesting information to have if we're looking at, capacity for the different buildings. But if it's a huge cost and we're looking at, percentage increases up and down of 0.4 and, here and there, I'm not sure it gets us what we need, but Molly.
I can easily check that out with you with our one of our team members.
Yeah, and I also would like to know whether this could be included in the demographic study that has already been
right. So if
done.
the information's already been created,
right,
yeah,
it may just be parsing it out and presenting in a different way, not necessarily starting a new study and considering a different project. I see it as the same project, just the information presented in a different format.
Yeah.
Okay.
It depends on how we gave it to them. Yeah. So.
Yep. Okay.
Any other?
No, I'm good.
Good. All right. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope you all enjoy the next few days, and I hope you get some nice end of summer weather. Today's it. Take care.
Thank you.
John.
Bye now.
Yeah, Valley?
So before we go to the next agenda item, I also wanted to ask Becky if at some point after we get those updated pieces, we can have a presentation with the current number of students in each school and the current number of rooms available that are not being used or that could be made available to students if we move something else, and where that would be. So I don't have a very good grasp about the current capacity of the schools, and part of this process is to understand that too, and then look at the projections and see what the space that we currently have can accommodate.
All right. So we're going to, yeah, Jen.
Just to, Susanna brought it up and we kind of talked about it, but if we could get, you said we had past years of homeschooled, because it only included 2020 on there. So I think that that's obviously like something that would be really important back as far as, 5, 10 years if possible, whatever we have.
Yeah, I mean, I know Ginny's been creating that for the last at least 5 years, so
Yeah.
we can look at that trend. I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably gives us,
Yeah.
what we're looking
I mean,
for
that
in
could
terms
be,
of.
the pandemic probably had a lot
I
to do with
imagine that
yeah.
drove that number up. Yeah. Jeremy.
Just one more. Thinking when we do the annual look at inflows and outflows of students and stuff, maybe we could look at a summary of housing permits pulled or something to try and keep on top of that going forward too, just so we have the numbers. I know at least the towns seem very willing to provide those. So it might be an easy data pull from them.
Right, because I think a lot of it's relative data, right? Like they're building every single year. But what's a lot? What's more than normal? What's something that, we should have to prepare for potentially? So seeing that sort of over time might be helpful. Maddie.
I think of the best way to say this. I am very interested in the information that Valley is requesting. I think it's important as we consider building projects or renovations. But I wonder if possibly that information from this group might come to Becky and staff and then have you present it to us, or just have it be a very concise presentation on exactly what we've asked for without doing all the background again. I'd like to make sure that we have the time to look at the data and then discuss it and ask questions.
Thank you. All right, are we ready to move not on, but back? All right, so we're going to jump back now to 7, public comment. I think we have a public comment. So just for an FYI, he's speaking as a resident. That's why he's decided to do this during public comment, and we'll be doing it from over there. So.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Jeremy Clough. I'm from Freeport, Maine, and and as some may remember, I'm pulling a page from the Nelson Larkins book from way back, where he every once in a while would take the podium. So, but there's been great discussion today, and sort of hoping to continue the discussions that we've had with this one as an idea for the future. This past August, I was honored to volunteer at the Steel Strong lacrosse tournament that was held on the FHS turf to honor Steele Crawford. As we all likely know, Steele was a student that died tragically in a freak rope swing incident back in 2019, and it was just a few weeks before he started his senior year. As a volunteer lacrosse coach, I never got the chance to coach Steele. Was very much looking forward to it in 2020, and obviously that never happened. But I did get the chance to know Steele a little bit that spring, and some of his family too. Steele was exactly the kind of kid that you want in a high school community, and that the kids could look up to. A friend and competitor of Steele's helped organize a tournament back 2 years ago, and then this year that this year had about 250 players in the tournament, both boys and girls. It was an amazing event with hundreds of participants and hundreds of spectators there too. Let's see, I don't want to lose my spot. So as part of the tournament, there is a scholarship fund, and that's where funds were raised as part of the tournament. This year, 2 FHS students were recipients of that funds from the scholarships. In 2019, proceeds went to other lacrosse standouts from local teams, not necessarily from Freeport. Before the tournament began and then during the tournament, I learned and then talked to some other parents and was very surprised to find that the RSU had charged for field use during the tournament. The explanation was understandable that it wasn't a school-sponsored event, so that's met the criteria, but I was disappointed that there was an exception made for a kid who had very recently been at our school, and this was, a tournament set up in his honor. Found it very disappointing was the word that I had as a parent and a teacher. I had a volunteer. And along with those discussions, I also found out that the Crawford family and the Freeport lacrosse boosters had proposed putting a falcon head out at the turf, similar to what we have between the FPAC and the high school and the gym here. And the Crawford family asked that something along the lines of "in memory of Steele Crawford" be put on that monument underneath the falcon. And I was told that the idea of putting Steele's name on the monument was rejected due to some sort of study from the Center for Grieving Children that I didn't actually see the text of, but that's what I was told on that. And frankly, those two decisions really first kind of upset me, and then just kind of generally like, bleh. Why? I just feel like these decisions weren't looked at, from kind of a more up view or a higher view or something was made. Well, the policy says we can't do this, so therefore we can't make that exception. So let me just make sure I keep my notes, because I know I'm probably over time already. So FHS already has 2 memorials that are at least 2 memorials for prior fallen students and recent graduates. I was surprised to learn that FMS, the basketball courts there, is a memorial to a child that died on a school trip, which I had no idea that that's what the outdoor basketball courts were for. Steele Crawford was an athlete and a student leader who really deserves to be memorialized at the school. And I really hope that the board can consider asking Becky to look into having his name be on a future monument here. So, great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. I don't think we have any other public comment. I don't see anyone hiding back there, right? Okay. All right, so then we will continue on with our agenda and move on to the report from the superintendent.
All right, thank you. We'll start with our COVID update. We are now at 26 confirmed cases. This doubles the 13 cases that we had in January and March, which were our highest monthly counts last year. As of September the 19th, there were 372 reported cases in Freeport, 6 to 19 in South Freeport, 20 to 49 in Pownell, and 191 in Durham. We've had 10 cases within the RSU 5 in the last 14 days. So I will also tell you that we've had the pool testing going for 2 weeks now, and each time we have discovered one positive case that we wouldn't have otherwise discovered. We're also, we've just sent out our second survey to staff on whether they are vaccinated. That is something that is required by the DOE. This is only now going to those staff members who didn't want to answer, who said they weren't vaccinated in September. And with Biden's recent order, we are waiting for guidance on the logistics about employees who are not vaccinated having to test weekly. We did get further information that the public schools in Maine will be having to do that they are covered under that order. So we're just waiting to hear more about the details. I'm happy to report on the COVID front that currently 72% of our eligible families are opting into the pool testing. And so we met, I think, yesterday, and are moving forward with expanding the pool testing to FMS and Freeport High School. This will take, just as it did at the elementary level, some time. We need to find support staff to support the effort. We need to send out the permission slips. We need to inform the staffs that we're doing this. And, the biggest logistical piece will really be how to kind of pull that off at the high school. And so we're exploring other high schools that are working on getting this up and running and kind of checking with them to see how they're making it happen. We hope to begin no later than the beginning of November with the middle and high school. And if we can do it before then, we will. We know that the best protection against the virus is being vaccinated, and want to encourage our students, parents, and staff to continue to get vaccinated. We also know that the Delta variant is far more contagious and want to do all we can to keep our students in school and learning 5 days a week. And so that's my COVID update. On the employment front, we still are looking for staff, which is unusual for us at this time of the year. We still have the math strategist openings at both the elementary and secondary level. We are now in need of 2 bus drivers, 5 special ed technicians, a field maintenance worker, and anybody who's interested in being a sub of any type, we would love to have you. Bus drivers, custodians, van drivers, teachers, ed techs. We want you if you're wanting to come to work for RSU 5. The board's next opportunity for professional development is going to be October the 28th from 9:15 to 11:15 at the high school. And during this time, you'll be visiting classrooms and advisories. So I'm hoping that some of you can make that.
That's the MSMA conference.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Oh, I'll get back to Jen. Thank you for pointing that out. Although it is virtual, right? The conference?
I suppose.
Yeah. No, we'll change it. All right, so on to the equity update. Our DEI committee will be meeting next week for the first time this school year. We've also received a rough draft of the disaggregated data from Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium as part of the audit around the discipline, advanced placement, and retention rates. We have met with them once, and we're looking at some of the numbers and doing some double checking. And so as soon as it's finalized, we will make that available to the board. And we have started, the administrators have started planning the social emotional well-being in RSU 5 for the board workshop on October the 27th. They're also on the equity front. There will be professional development for key K-12 staff members on the on an inquiry method on really how to lead difficult conversations around equity and inclusion. This work began yesterday. There will be an additional day in October. They'll be trained for a total of 20 hours over the next 3 months. And then these will be the key staff members that go back into the schools to train the rest of the classroom teachers on how to facilitate conversations on equity and inclusion in the classroom. A woman, an outside consultant by the name of Kate Stitham, is leading this training. Mid-Atlantic will also be offering further training at the high school level because the staff asked for that on October the 7th, again around how to kind of facilitate those discussions in their classrooms. I want to put a plug out there for Lynn Lyons, who will be offering a workshop for all parents on the evening of October the 6th at 6 p.m. And the workshop is titled Managing Emotional Health During Uncertain Times. This will be offered via Zoom, and we're hoping that we have a wonderful turnout from our parents. Everyone that has seen her has really raved about her. So I think that's, I think it's an opportune time for us all to get some more strategies on kind of how to deal with that with our kids. And more information will be being sent out or has been sent out by our building principals with the Zoom link and more information about Lynn. On the sports front, our boys soccer team is doing very well with 5 wins, 2 losses, and 1 tie. Our girls soccer, 3 wins, 4 losses. Field hockey, we have a 3-4 ratio there. Football, 3 wins, 1 loss. The cross country runners, yes, will be doing their championship on October the 15th. Golf, I guess, finished 3rd yesterday in their Western Maine Championship, and I guess Eli came in 1st, and Finn Sharp placed 5th, and so that's just really exciting. We are preparing for the homecoming dance. This has taken, I know, a lot of time of Jen and Charlie's. As you've probably read in the paper, some districts have decided not to hold one. We continue to try and create as much normalcy for our kids as possible. And so in order for us to feel confident about the dance, we have really created stricter criteria than in previous years. We're not allowing outside guests. Masks are being required even though we're holding it outdoors. And we're requiring that students either need to be vaccinated or be tested before coming to the dance. I've had a few emails feeling like this goes against our equity practices, what we're saying that we value around equity and inclusion. I don't believe that it does, or I wouldn't be doing this, but we are just really trying to minimize the health risk to our students to the extent possible and still hold the rituals that our kids really long to have return. And we've had the question more than once about, well, why can the kids sit on the bleachers unmasked and unvaccinated but not at the dance? I have not been to a school dance in a long time, I will say that. But I hear there's not an event where they're in closer proximity than at the school dance. And so that is why we're being a lot stricter. We currently have 340 students signed up. And so we're going to have a lot of kids. I think that shows that they're really excited about the dance. And I'm holding my breath, and I'm just hoping it all goes well. And so we're just taking as many precautions as possible. And the highlight of my week and day today was going to the Peace Garden rededication ceremony. It was a beautiful day for it. As Jen told you, it opened in 2001, and this is the 20th year celebration. John did a wonderful job. And it was just a wonderful way to have a bite out of my day where I didn't have to think about COVID or the homecoming dance. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. So anyway, so I also have 2 resignations. One is on your packet, Kelly Hansen and Moore Street Ed Tech. The other one is Ken Sylvester, one of our bus drivers. And then in your packet is our unofficial September enrollment. There are 53 additional students from our certified October the 1st enrollment from last year. And then also in your packet are the programs being offered for the fall conference. I hope that many of you will consider attending that conference. And that concludes my report for the evening.
Polly.
Thank you, Becky. Question about the concern about lack of equity with the dance. Was that because some students are unvaccinated and they can't afford the test kits?
No, they just feel like that we're, it really, if it was like they couldn't afford it, we could definitely, take care of that. It really is more, they see it as discrimination.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to make sure that the test kits were available for students who cannot afford them, who are not vaccinated. And I'm glad to hear that they are. So thank you for doing that.
Definitely. I mean, they would have to tell us that they need help with, the cost of that.
Right.
But
And
we definitely could, we had a very, very generous donor this year that gave us money to put in a student activity account for when we have students who can't kind of meet those basic needs. So we definitely could cover that.
Okay. And is this something that has been communicated to students?
I'm not sure it's been communicated in that way. There hasn't been any discussion that that's the problem.
Okay.
The problem that's really being communicated is they feel like this is starting to create division, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated.
Okay. Thank you.
Just have a quick question. What do you mean by test kits? You mean like something, a home test?
No, I interpreted Valley's question to mean if somebody had a hard time affording going to the doctor to get tested or to a pharmacy, is there money available for those families? And I'm saying yes, there is.
All right, thank you.
Yes. But no, you can't do your own home test.
Yeah, I think it said that in the letter. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So the reason we don't allow that, I mean, it would be very easy for somebody else to swab and show the results.
It doesn't cost anything to get tested at at Rite Aid, at CVS, like all of it's free.
I can actually speak about that. It's basically all of the free testing now is through Walgreens.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
And
so
that's set up
that's
through
the only place
state.
I've ever gone, but I've never paid.
And it's changed, and it's so now you have to go on the Walgreens website and you have to make an appointment in advance. But you're right, there is no cost. To us.
I would just add, having done that, sometimes there's no appointments in the area, that's when the fee comes into it, because to get a test in the time frame you want a negative test, you have to go somewhere, and it's expensive, from what I found.
Betty?
I was basically going to say that because I think I've heard that there's quite a backlog. So I mean that could be a real barrier. Yeah.
Valley?
Thank you. And I have a question about the September enrollments. Where you have added a column, the projected 2021, were those projections assuming that every student who left the district during COVID would return?
We did have discussions on that at the administrative team back when we were building the budget. And we did make an assumption that, I don't know if we went with everyone, but the majority.
Yeah, I had a question sort of piggybacking with that. I mean, they all look pretty similar or close to the budget, the budgeted numbers, except for Moore Street. It looked like we budgeted 55 more kids, which is almost it's more than a 20% increase in the population of the school. And I don't remember, I feel like that would have been a really big number for us to not have noticed. And clearly only 16 came back instead of 50. Was that really what we thought? It was going to go from 284 to 333?
Oh, I would love to.
Since you're here.
Oh, how convenient.
So the problem with projections at Moore Street is that we have two intake grades that we really can't predict who's going to show up. And what I noticed with the pandemic is that because pre-K is not a have to for anybody, a lot of families who were pre-registered, we lost a lot of pre-K particularly. And then similarly in K, there were families who chose to stay wherever they were, who, if there was a kindergarten offering, or some who were pre-K went private and stayed. So there was just, it became a real challenge to really project those numbers. But the trend had been that we were filling our pre-K and then we were getting 30 or so more in K. And based on kind of pandemic decisions, we just didn't see that same pattern coming through.
Gotcha. Okay. And that sort of flows into my second question, which was about pre-K. So it sort of piggybacking off what Julie just said, we had seen that there were families that wanted pre-K that couldn't get it in the prior years. And if I'm doing the math right, we had 128 spots and only 98 kids this year. And every town has availability, so it's not like they're oversubscribed in some towns and space in others, because I know that was kind of an issue in prior years. What are our takeaways from that? Is this sort of residual COVID malaise around sending the kiddos to school, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think, those are the parents who are most concerned. And, well, I don't think that's fair. But I think, the anxiety around sending your first child to school anyway increased with, what's happening with COVID has contributed to, it's a choice, let's not do it. I actually am getting registrations for pre-K still. We just enrolled somebody for last week. I know somebody came in yesterday. So actually my sessions, whilst not full, are starting I'm getting more registrations.
Do we have a deadline? If somebody comes in May and says, I want to bring my kid for pre-K, you can do it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And actually I would invite that. I'd rather have them for a month at the end of school than see what comes in September. At least it gives them an opportunity to, be familiar with people and school. Helps with the transition in the fall.
And before you go, I have one more question for you. This is great that you're here. So when I look at the breakdown of the 4 pre-K sessions at Moore Street, I was curious of the distribution.
Yeah. So in February, we do our screening for pre-K because there's an urgency for families who need to commit to their current daycare setting. And so at that point, we've always said registrations are open until, and then if we're filled, we'll fill by need, based on need. So at that point, we place 4 groups. And then what has been happening is in that window of time between February and September, people move, people leave, people change their minds, people decide, actually, I can't find care for, you gave me afternoon, and I can't actually find care for the other half of the day, so can you switch me into the other session? So some of it is just the juggle around. And if the sessions were full, we wouldn't have the option to move people, but that's kind of the reality of what has happened, the movement in and out. And most people want mornings. You'll see our morning sessions are full and the afternoons are smaller. So if they're asking for mornings and I have a space, I'll give it to them, and then the afternoons are a little smaller.
Thanks. All right. Were you going to say anything about this other than that we had it?
Yeah. You have it.
Okay.
Please sign up.
So one thing I did want to point out that we figured out this week, which is a change from the norm, a couple of things. So the conference has historically aligned with the delegate, and Susanna picked up on this, I think, the delegate assembly. It was always one of the sessions at the conference, which basically meant that everybody who went to that missed out on another session. So what they have done this year is separate the two events. So when we voted at our last meeting, when Jill kindly volunteered to be the delegate, and we thought it was going to be somewhere in these days, or the date that we had talked about, not realizing that it was different than the conference. That date was correct. So the 23rd is the delegate assembly, Saturday at 9:30. And then that following Thursday, Friday will be the annual fall conference. So they've separated those two things. So as every year, I always recommend folks join if they can. Becky pointed out that it is in fact virtual again, so you can do it from the comfort of wherever you have Wi-Fi, and they always have really good clinics. So I encourage folks to register if they can, even if they can't do 2 full days. Having the opportunity to be involved as much as you can, I think everybody would get something out of that. And Ginny just needs to know by the 4th, and she will register everybody. So just shoot her an email and let her know if you would like her to register you, and she will make that happen. Yeah.
Last year they had everything was available afterwards, so if you couldn't attend right on that day, so I don't see anything about that, but I would hope that they're doing the same thing.
19.
Oh, it does say that? I missed it. Okay. Thank you.
There you go. So
Which is why I said you could do 2 things, but we'll still change the date.
that would be the whole morning of the conference. So just encourage folks to let Ginny know if you would like to and can participate. And then the other piece is the regional meeting where they're going to talk about the resolutions. I think most folks got that MSMA or MSBA email from Steve Bailey in the last couple days. It's actually tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, and I believe both Jill and Maura are going to be on that to talk about the resolutions and kind of, what we had talked about as a group and as their wordsmithing they can do and those sort of things. It's open to anybody in Region 7, which is us. So if anybody else is interested, the Zoom link is in that email from Steve Bailey. So just a quick reminder on that. Now we're moving on, right? Okay. So we will move on to administrator reports, and we're going to start with finance. Rick.
I have that effect on people. I need to start my report with the sports as well. I'd just like to report that the Cowboys currently have a better record than the Patriots, so we're very helpful for this season. I don't have a lot to report. It's still very early in the year. I did want to point out that the reports, certainly the one in your package and the ones that are posted on the website, look different. They are different, and that reflects our new system, Infinite Visions. We are still, I would say, somewhat in implementation, although we've been running it live now since July 1st. We obviously have some bumps that we are smoothing out still, but generally speaking, I think we're very pleased with the product, and it has certainly expanded some of our capabilities with regard to financial reporting and certainly monitoring of the financial health of the district. As you look at the reports, or if you have questions, again, certainly they're going to look a little bit different. If you have questions, certainly send them over to me, and I'll try to explain them as best I can. Other than that, that concludes my report.
Any questions for Rick, not related to the Cowboys? It's not for long anyway, so enjoy it.
Yeah, that's what they are, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we are back to Julie. It's the Julie show today.
Maybe I won't have to speak at all for the rest of the year.
Wishful thinking.
Yeah. Okay, so I would like, just so that it makes sense for me, to kind of talk about this year's goals and kind of reflect back on last year's as it makes sense as to how they've influenced this year's. And if you've been on the board for a while, you will know that my first goal has been in existence for several years, and we were on the right path to meet it. It was intended to be written as a 3-year goal to meet our reading growth target, and then we had increased by 10% each year, and we were on target to meet that 75% for that 2020 year, and we had gone remote for that last part of school, and I think we didn't collect data that year. And I think, the data since has reflected that has been an impact on student growth. So I've written these new goals whilst they have the same essence. I mean, the primary focus for us as a primary school is to get our readers to where they need to be, and also to have foundational math skills so that they're ready to grow and do great things as they move on. So our academically based goal is in 3 parts. The first being to have 75% or more of our students K2 meeting their growth target on the F&P reading assessment, which is our primary data source of when we think about our readers. This past year, we managed to get 59% of our students as a whole school to hit their growth. But one piece of data to note was our kindergarten data was stronger than ever. So we can hypothesize about lots of different things, but what it does mean is we have kind of this fresh, like our first graders are moving on strong. And so with all kids back 5 days a week, kind of we're set up for that year to, for us to be building on, going from strength to strength. And then the other 2 pieces are math data. And again, if you've heard me up here multiple years in a row, you'll know we've really struggled K2 with a math measure that we can really feel like is a standardized, reliable assessment. And so now we have 2 pieces of assessment data in place, which is one is we're using the Acadience math, which is a screener. That's all. It is it's given 3 times a year as like a screener. So it's a dip into like what do students know, but it's standardized. So it kind of really is measuring what most students should know by that stage of age and development. And it really gives us an overview. And then for students who we need more information on, we have other assessments that we use for diagnostic reasons. But this gives us that high level overview of how we're doing as a school. And it has certainly informed the work we'll do this year. Like one of the things that has become very apparent is that counting is, and I know that seems, I kind of am like, I'm really standing here saying this, but counting has been a place that we really need to improve. And so we've already started PD around what we can do to change our practices to make sure we're really supporting children in their counting, and how we're learning how that impacts all of the other progressions of math. So once you get into place value, if you haven't really got strong counting and you know how to switch, you can start counting from 83 and carry on, and start counting from different numbers and being really flexible in your counting. It really does impact the more complex skills as children move on. So that's been a big focus for us already. We've had, in the absence of a math strategist, our math RTI teacher, who's awesome, has really taken this on as a leadership project for her, and her using her depth of knowledge around math. She's really supporting each team in how this might look in the classrooms to do some different things. And then the one other measure for us is we start using NWA in 2nd grade. So it's not a growth target for us. It's kind of like, it's an achievement target that we would get at least 75% of our 2nd graders who score average or above on that assessment, as it becomes a baseline for growth targets as children move on. And in 2019, we did have at least 74% of our students who were there, but last year we were at 53. So that will, hopefully we can bounce back and have students meeting that target. A lot of the work, I'll just go back to last year's goals were similar. They were framed a little bit differently. A lot of the work that we had intended on doing kind of got sidelined in terms of the depth we were able to address just because of the situation we were in and the amount of time that took to plan for and teachers to be flexible around. And then, we did give all the professional development time back to teachers for planning. So much of what we had planned to do, we really didn't address, or we did in some ways, but we certainly didn't go deep in any way. So we're back on track already. We'll have our third session of a book study we're doing around really looking at the science of reading. And then, like I said, we've already started our math PD at PLCs, and things are happening in classrooms already as a result of that. So I'm pretty exciting for things to feel a little more normal around our staff development and the work we're doing as PLCs and supporting each other as colleagues. My second two goals are, I always have had a social-emotional goal, and this year it's really around, this is my 7th year at Moore Street, and we started really digging deeper with responsive classroom practices in my first year. And it was definitely kind of a front burner topic for us in those first 3 years. But since then, staff have turned over. I think at least half, if not more, staff have turned over since those first initial 3 years. And so, it's time to kind of, in order for those practices to stay strong, to revisit some of those trainings and things that we did to make sure we maintain it. And I don't know if you've seen, but there was a post on social media in the last couple of days that really shows when was the last full year students have been at school. And if you look at that, there is not one student at Moore Street who has actually had a full year of school. So, when normally it takes a while for kindergarten to settle, and I'm always coaching kindergarten teachers when they're looking really tired on a Friday, I'm like, you've got it, they'll settle by November. And that's the case for everybody this year. Like, we're really, children have not worked those muscles around how to interact. Really my behavior needs last year were like almost non-existent. And, so we're seeing some of those things crop up and problem-solving things that need, more attention. And so bringing our focus back to those responsive classroom practices, which really promote proactive support, is one of our focuses. So we had 10 staff go and do the initial responsive classroom training. And then we had 11 more staff or different staff who had already done that training do the advanced. So it feels like we kind of had a really good reset, and we're able to kind of work together to kind of bring those practices back to the front of our work. And then our third goal is around our equity, diversity, and inclusion work. And so this will be a focus for whole staff. So we split our time generally between kind of academic work and instructional work, and then also, what brings us together as a whole staff and what threads do we have in common. And so that's our work this year. Last year we really focused on, and that was like our third goal last year, it was more a focus group because we just did not have the capacity as a whole staff to be digging deep and really talking about what changes we needed to make. And so we partnered with Mars Landing last year and with a smaller group, just kind of like, okay, where are we at? What are we already doing, and where do we need to strengthen? And we did a book study as a group just to kind of push our thinking and start having conversations. And then from that, we realized, Emily and I had a lot of conversation around our work. Our buildings are different. However much we thought it was a good idea to kind of partner our groups, we maybe didn't get as deep as we would have liked to have gone because the relationships weren't necessarily established within our group, and we were meeting on Zoom. So that also kind of gave us it just changed the flavor of how productive that we could have been. Anyway, we certainly had a few learnings, although not the only learnings. Was that, you know, when we think about equity and inclusion, we really need to be thinking about it in our approach to everything we do. So as we plan lessons, is there any groups of children who are not able to access? Where are the barriers, and who are the barriers, you know, relate to, and how can we start thinking about things differently? What texts are we putting in front of children so that representation is broad? What kinds of literature are we bringing to the classrooms? You know, we're having those kinds of conversations, and we've definitely, you know, like I said earlier with our classroom libraries, they've evolved depending on student interest, but they're also evolving so that we've got a lot of different books and representation in front of children. I mean, at pre-K 2, books are really our avenue into many, many conversations. And so that's a lot of our work, and really thinking about different things to facilitate conversations in different ways. So this year, our focus is really about bringing our whole staff into those conversations. We find it has been successful for us to kind of anchor in a book. And the book we've chosen is Start Here, Start Now, A Guide to Anti-Bias, Anti-Racist Work in Your School Community. And the reason I chose it is that oftentimes I found ourselves spinning around theory, and what teachers often want is, well, tell me what to do tomorrow. And so this book helps with some of that, right? What can you do that will make a difference in your classroom tomorrow? And so we haven't started yet, but we will be next couple of weeks, and we'll see. We haven't started our book yet, so just to clarify. And so we'll see where it takes us, and what our next steps are. But you know, we started our school year. Our opening of school day was we had because we've got new staff, we needed to do some kind of team building, community building work. But we chose the avenue to be identity work. Who are we? What do we value? What do you want people to know about you? Different things like that, and our school counselor took us through an activity that teachers could do in their classrooms too, but we did it as an adult learning community. So we're doing different things like that. We're starting to think about, how do we get to know our community, our parents, who is part of our community, what are their beliefs and values, and how do we need to think about that? I mean, we've written the survey we're going to send out, but it's being stalled in making sure we have translations for the families that we know need to receive that in different languages. So, you know, it just has been, I know that some schools who need to do that because they have like 70 different languages have that kind of thing ready to go. It's definitely been oh, hang on a minute, we got to figure this out. So, and I definitely see that our population is starting to shift for sure. So our needs around, you know, being able to send literature out translated is important. So, where am I? Is there anything else I wanted to? Oh, and the other goal from last year was around our Rtib implementation. And so I think this is our third year with Rtib as part of our support system. And we are in our third person in the position. So we haven't had 2 years yet with the same person to kind of carry over. However, we do have consistent social work. So there has been consistency we do have a system as being implemented, and we are able to support children who present with more significant behavioral needs within regular ed. Any questions?
Rally. Thank you, Julie. 2 questions I have. One for the academic goals. I really respect your desire to go from, say, 53 to 75 and 37 to 75. Those are very, very ambitious goals and targets, which I applaud, but are they achievable?
You know, I don't think I can stand here and say my goal is only to get half of our kids to, where they need to be. And so we're going to try. They might not be, but I definitely feel that, with children back at school 5 days a week, and like I said, that that kindergarten grade is key in the sense of they are strong. They are moving into first grade stronger than ever. And then we're prioritizing our RTI support, where typically we would be making sure all grades had some level of support. Second grade is a priority for us this year. So in this first round of RTI support, our most skilled teachers are prioritizing support in second, which is they're the students who have the biggest gap to grow. So it might be ambitious, but I'd like to think that, I think it's just hard to stand here and say we're only going to grow 50% of our kids. So.
Thank you. I love your optimism. But also knowing that you have the supports in place and you have a plan to back up that.
And, the other part too is we've been able to, another thing we're kind of thinking about this year around our RTI supports is we have an opportunity to provide some before and after school, which we've never done before. And so the benefits of that in enabling kids to not be pulled as much from the classroom time, I'm optimistic that, obviously we're not going to be able to offer that to, we only have 2 people who are doing that work, and there's only much time before and after school. But, just for those children who get support in multiple areas to be able to have one less time that maybe they're pulled or need to be with somebody else for support, and instead they're in the classroom, I hope that, it's going to help.
And is that additional RTI work funded through COVID funds? Yeah, great.
Yep.
And then I had another question, but it's from one of the other goals. So if anyone has anything to say about the academic goals, I'll wait. Okay. So the other question I had was around the DEI goal. And the question I have is about the rewriting of grade 2 social studies and replacing colonial history with Wabanaki studies. I was a little surprised to see that you're replacing and not adding. Is there a reason why we're not including the Wabanaki studies alongside the colonial, and we're basically excluding the colonial now? So that we can
it's
focus
not,
on Wabanaki?
it wasn't exclusively, all about colonial living and life in kind of one story, in one narrative story. I may have misspoken in terms of, I don't know that it's a complete elimination. They're definitely exploring some new things, and potentially we may go back to okay, how can we put both of these things together? I think it's evolving. It's certainly not done, finished, changed in a way. It's just they have worked on adding some new kits and resources to help support part of the curriculum that wasn't there, and there are parts of kind of the colonial history that are taught in other grades. It just so happens that second grade had it extensively, and they're kind of shifting their gears a little bit. But that will also be part of more work that Cynthia's doing. That's kind of more. This was kind of like an isolated second grade have made a change. Doesn't mean to say it's finished by any stretch of the imagination.
Thank you,
Julie. I think you, and in my review of it, I didn't catch this, but I think you meant 2022 on that. Do you not?
No, they have already rewritten a unit that
I just mean on
in
the
goal.
bigger goal.
In
to the left.
Oh yeah, I did.
I know. I'm
No,
sorry. I'm sorry.
I didn't catch that either. Yes, you are right.
That was going to be my question is how does that piece fit into the broader curriculum look at social studies? So that was just sort of one sort of glaring thing you guys noticed that you've made an adjustment with, but the whole curriculum is going to get reviewed this year.
Exactly. Okay. It was just something that was not present at all. And so, the reality is in our school, we do 3 science units and 3 social studies units per grade. And we're still working on the bigger picture around the social studies piece. So,
Great. Any other questions for Julie? Thank you. All right. So, board comments and committee reports. So, board information exchange and agenda requests. So, anybody who's had a subcommittee meeting that would like to report out or has a information request, now would be your opportunity. Maddie.
Thank you. So I am on the FPAC Advisory Committee. I'm the sole member of the FPAC Advisory Committee. And the manager of the FPAC is Sean McEwen, who is also our Freeport High School band teacher. He and I actually did meet last year as well, but this year I thought I would report back to you so you would just understand a little bit more about what's happening. So we met last Wednesday. Last year, he was able to purchase a new Genie Lift, which is that sort of scissor lift thing that's necessary in order to reach the lighting on the stage at the FPAC. And this is something that is also going to be made available to Dennis and his crew to use for other maintenance projects in the school as needed. Another big purchase last year was a new 4K projector and a new screen, which is great. The way I understand it, the old system was significantly limited, which is why if you've gone to sports nights and things like that and there are technical glitches, it's because it was an outdated system. Approximately 75% of the lighting in the FPAC is now LED lighting. It's very easy to change the colors and has a much higher energy efficiency, so that's exciting. Since July, this past summer, we've started to resume booking events. That's great. So a couple things coming up are there's the United States Air Force and the Heritage Wind. Yeah, it's the Air Force Heritage Wind Ensemble on October 22nd at 7 p.m. I actually have seen them before. They're quite remarkable. Recommend going to that. And the FPAC is currently working on training new student employees from the high school to help work at future events. That's something I think he has always done. We do a really, not me, they do a really good job. I feel with the technical education, like the backstage kind of stuff, we've got great tech kids at this school who go on to do it, which is really cool. Fundraising efforts are in the planning stages right now to help maintain the future of the FPAC. And I think it's important to note that because I don't know if everyone realizes that the FPAC is not in our budget. We never hear presentation about what kind of funding do we give to the FPAC. It's because they're meant to be self-sustaining. So they rely on the profit made from the renters. So that's really important. So please support them and please send folks their way if people are looking for a big stage. And in case you want to know more about the FPAC, go to their website, which is freeportpac.weebly.com, and there you will find information about pricing, booking, the dimensions of the stage, and the history of the Steinway piano, which is a really interesting thing to know about as well. And if you haven't been around this community for a decade or so, you might not know that, and it's good information.
Jen.
So I just want to respond as a board member to the community member who spoke this evening, and I would be in full support of a board request. I don't know how that would happen, but I think that as a board, I would love to see if everyone else is on the same page and asking Becky to look into that, especially since there are other memorials at the schools. That was the big piece that I found was a big discrepancy with what Jeremy shared. So I don't know how to request that, but that's what I'm requesting.
Okay, we'll give that some thought on how we can hear more about that, because there's a lot to it, I think. So to Maddie's point, we saw the fancy new lift when we did the facilities tour. Beth and I went on the tour last week with Dennis, and that was a great collaboration, actually, because I think it was half, the FPAC paid for half of it, and then the district paid for the other half. And he said it's the best thing they've bought in years. Like, they use it. He's moved it to other schools. I guess on several occasions every year they have to rent those to get to certain places. And now they don't have to do that. They have it in-house, and sounds like it's very multifunctional. So that's good to hear that kind of collaboration going on. So, and he was very excited about it. Molly.
I want to echo Jen's request for some kind of information discussion, whether on the agenda or written or something, so that the board can at least get informed about how the decisions were made. I also was surprised to hear that there's a rule about no memorials when we know there are memorials there. So I would love to know more about that. And I also wanted to share that Paige Fournier, who is the Teacher of the Year candidate, had DOE come, other representatives come to observe her teach, and she invited, as part of the process, a lot of students and parents of those students who had been taught by her. And after that day, I talked to her, and she said the most valuable thing in this entire process to her, whether she becomes or doesn't become Teacher of the Year, was getting the feedback from the students and the parents. And she said, we teachers hardly ever get to hear that, because the students move on and we don't know what impact we have. And it made me think that maybe we should think about trying to do something along those lines for other teachers too. Because she said it was just invaluable. So I wanted to share that.
All right. Any other information shares, requests? Great. All right. So we will move on to policy. Candy.
Okay. Well, we met in September, and we will be meeting again this Friday. Our second meeting. There's always policies to look at. And who would have thought? Here's the 3 policy committee people right here. Oh, okay. So we looked at 4 policies, which Cynthia will be talking to you about. 3 that are, coming here for first read that were existing policies. One of them, kind of interesting, is the immunization of students in today's world. And one that's a new policy, which also is very pertinent, remote participation in school board meetings. And that policy deals with both school board members and the public in terms of remote participation. And Cynthia will take us through the policies.
Good evening. So I just wanted to start by saying that my highlight, since Dr. Foley shared her highlight for today while she was at the Peace Garden, which she said, "Are you going to come?" And I said, "I'll be in a 4-hour training today." So I was at the 4 hours of virtual Drummond with some legislative update, which is over 100 printed pages of updates that will impact the policy. We have more work. Will impact the policy committee greatly, and many departments within our the RSU. So more fun ahead.
Wait, that was your highlight? I assumed you were going to get to your lunch or something after that.
And my step count is really low today. So with that said, as you remember from the retreat when we had Melissa Huey presenting, she pulled some of our policies and said, "Oh, you need to do this, that, and the other." So, and she mentioned this remote participation in school board meeting policy. And so, the first policy you see in front of you is called BED. This is brand new for bed. Go to bed. Yeah. No, we don't. No, there it is, a code. It's a particular national code. So I'll just take you through this. I'll just do a summary of this. I'm sure you've read it, but I'll just take you through it. As you know, last year we had, the emergency directive that we could have remote participation. And so that no longer applies this year unless you have a policy which stipulates when and how and why you can participate in remote board meetings. And so the first paragraph basically says it's limited circumstances. The second paragraph defines the methods. It either has to be telephonic or video or remote video, which would include the audio portion as well. So then the next paragraph encourages that you should really always, whenever possible, have full board meetings in person. That's just the statement that's, this is expected, procedure. And then when you get to that beginning of that fourth paragraph that starts circumstances, 1, 2, and 3 outline for us the limited circumstances in which that should occur. Obviously, number 1 is the same as last year, that emergency, state declared emergency. So if that may or could happen this year, who knows, but hopefully it won't. So that explains number 1. Number 2 is illness or physical condition or temporary unexpected absence, the area governed by the board that causes a board member to face significant difficulties traveling to and attending in person. And that if that's going to be considered, it has to have some prior notice and be communicated to the board chair. I'll get more in detail on that in just a minute. And then the last one is really about, it really doesn't apply to us that much, this number 3, but it's really if you had a bridge out or something like that and you just couldn't, if there was some windstorm and trees fell and, you couldn't travel, that would be considered under number 3. The bottom of that page is just the procedural part that you have roll call. If one or more board members is remote, you have to have roll call just like we did last year. And then the next page really focuses more on the public participation. So if all board members are remote, then the public participation must be provided remotely. That's an easy one. If one or more board members is remote and the rest are present, you have to have public participation in person as well as remote offering. So if just one board member is remote, then you have to open it up to the public to have it remote as well.
Can I ask where it says that? I was trying to find out, as I was reading it, I was trying to figure out, does this basically say we have to always have a remote option? Where does it say that?
You don't, you only have to have, it's in law, you only have to have a remote option if one person is remote. Otherwise, you don't, right now, right today, you wouldn't have a remote option. If we have this policy in place, we would not have public participation remotely. She's absent. She's not remote.
Because we don't have a policy.
If we had the policy in place, and she was absent and wasn't participating remotely, she just didn't, for whatever reason, didn't come. Her daughter had some activity or something, then that would be absent, not remote.
So where does it say that in the policy?
So,
or does it not?
I don't think that was a question that we clarified, so I don't think it's explicit. Well, let's see if I can find that for you. Okay. There's a member participate in votes taken.
I know we try not to put law in our policies, right? Because it's sort of redundant and sometimes they change. But that seems to me like one that people may ask about. And it would be great if our policy
I feel like
say
it's embedded in here. I'm just not spotting it right now. Any board policy committee people can jump into. So can you, Michelle, just clarify that one more time? You're looking for
So you said that
language-
we only have to allow remote public participation
If-
when at least one
Got
member
it.
is remote. So I'm just curious where it says that.
Okay, thank you.
Because it says notice of all board members is required, right? It references the law. When the public may attend by remote methods, notice must include the means by which members of the public can access the meeting using remote methods, right? So obviously we'd have to have the Zoom link up and available to people. But my question is when the public may attend by remote, like where does it say that?
Yeah.
No?
I think we need to add a
We could clarify
sentence
that.
just at the beginning that just says very simply that thing that I'm not going to attempt to say again right now.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, along the same lines, I have a question about the timing, because it says that
Yeah. I was gonna
you
get there.
notify the board chair as far in advance of the meeting as practicable, but that may not always give you enough time to notice the public that they can participate remotely.
So,
Well, it only
I
applies to
have a-
temporary unexpected absences, which by definition are not pre-planned.
Right, but don't we have a legal?
So I got some counsel on that. So I called Melissa with a few of these questions that we anticipated. So if one or more, okay. The one that goes with this one is early as practicable. And then she had a couple suggestions. She said on every agenda you could write in the event it has to go remote, this is going to be the Zoom link. So that would always be present on top of every agenda and online.
I don't love that because
Okay,
people are
or-
going to assume that it's eligible anytime.
Or will be posted on, or you could state instead of that, in the event that has gone remote, it will be posted on the front page of the website. So those were two suggestions from the lawyer, from Melissa.
So we can say the day off, say I
In the
fall
rare
ill
circumstance.
5 minutes before the meeting, and I call Michelle and I tell her, hey, I'm going to participate remotely because I'm ill.
So she
How do
suggested that if
we
you're ill,
know?
that
How do we let the public know that one board member, is remote, and therefore they, the public, can also participate remotely?
Yeah.
Don't we need to give them enough notice? And what is enough notice?
so I'm not sure if somebody who gets sick that day would be an approved,
I mean, it says illness. I mean, that's what it says.
And it says practicable, as soon as practicable. Maybe we
Right.
should say 5 days ahead. Maybe we should say exactly
illness-
how
well,
many days.
I mean, unless you're in quarantine.
Like when they talk about the bridge, we specifically, I was like, we don't have bridges, and it's like, if we do get limbs down, in our road, and that could be 5 minutes, or a windstorm, or a microburst, or tornado.
microburst.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I understand the intent of the policy. I'm supportive of us having one. But, we say it's in limited situations, but really the only thing that's excluded from this is I planned a vacation, right? I mean, everything else I could eventually, actually, planned a vacation you could do too. Or other physical condition that, that makes you away from the, I'm not here, so I'm going to be remote. I'm not sure.
So it says unexpected absence, if you look at number 2.
They're ors, not ands. They're ors. Illness or other physical condition or temporary unexpected absence. Any of those
Instead of-
apply,
Yeah.
right? So, this doesn't seem like it limit. If that's what the board wants to do and basically make remote an option all the time, then I think this policy is great. If our goal is to really try and keep it for when it's necessary, then I think we need to tighten it up. Jen?
So would that be, I'm looking at this, and most of these situations that now are giving a remote option, I would probably have opted to just be absent. Like if I was very sick, I probably would just not, and I did, I had a work conference once and I came by telephone, but honestly, looking back on that, I probably should have just said I'm not coming to that meeting. So, I think that if there's an understanding kind of that, that these are going to be used by the board for like very specific situations. But yeah, I mean, it leaves it open for no one to be absent again, ever, which would be unfortunate in terms of planning for this remote public whatever.
Actually, probably makes it easier because it's essentially available all the time. Susanna.
Yeah, I think just on that same one, I mean, temporary unexpected absence, that could mean that, you know, I've got a funeral to go to, for example, where I didn't know I was going until, you know, last night. But it also then means if I, you know, I go to a funeral somewhere and there's due to close contact with a COVID case or something of that sort, I know that I'm going to be quarantining for 2 weeks. That's not an unexcused absence in a same way. I mean, I can tell you that I'm coming home and for 2 weeks I'm not leaving my house. That's also quite different from a vacation in Florida or a work conference in which I would be here in other circumstances.
Yeah, I almost like just the temporary unexpected absence, right? Because it's not planned. If it would pick up illness, right? Like if, you know, if it wasn't necessarily your illness, but geez, now I'm, you know, one of my kids was tested positive and, you know, I'm waiting on a test because even if I'm vaccinated, I'm still waiting on a test and you shouldn't come. You know, that might be a situation where somebody could participate productively, remotely. And it hopefully becomes less common, right? As we move through. Maybe not ever. Jeremy.
It's kind of big picture question, but why not allow public participation via Zoom always?
I think just the technology piece of it is sometimes cumbersome and problematic to have somebody always watching that piece. You know, I think if we had a lot more, I know we had some really well-attended remote meetings, but I think by the end of the year, if we went back and looked, there maybe was one, or if it was us. Like, so it wasn't like hugely utilized to weigh against the technological, you know, lift of making sure it was always up and running and available, and you know, I mean, it's an option. I mean. And they don't necessarily have to tie together, right? I mean,
that's something
we can have remote participation all the time, but not necessarily allow our board members to be remote all the time, right? She's writing that down.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, what's sort of the, you know, the preference of the board on how strict do we want to be on in-person versus remote? Polly?
So I was wondering how people feel about either we all go remote or we're all here. The hybrid, I think, is the most difficult of all the models. So if we know that the tree's down and someone's stuck at home and they can come, maybe the best option is to say, okay, we all go remote. And then the chair is the one making the decision, whether we meet remotely or in person. But otherwise, I fear that every time there will be someone not here remotely. And unfortunately, the meeting doesn't flow very well when that's the case. So I don't know, that's too much to put on the chair, but it's one thought.
Yeah. Beth?
Just thinking about the technology difficulties and in the remote methods, you define it as telephonic or video. So I don't know if there would be, you know, a less cumbersome way to take phone calls from the public during public comment, or if that it's just a thought. So I just want to throw that out there.
And it is an option. I want to say Brunswick has always allowed people to call in with public comment. And it's just this voice that comes out over the speakers. I don't know how they do it, but, and I do want to make a caveat that our tech guys are fantastic, and this is not a reflection on them not being able to work the technology well. Like, it's just the way it is, it seems, these days. So, Jen.
I would just echo what Volley said. I have a hard time with the hybrid model as well. So, I mean, I know that it doesn't seem like it's really behind us, but the you know, the pandemic has, you know, I think it's gotten better for meetings. But I would also, you know, I feel like we've done a good job. I mean, I've been on the board for a while of, you know, if someone can't make it, they just don't make it. You know, but if there was a situation where one or two of the board members were, you know, it was a situation of quarantining and really couldn't leave or something, that Michelle, you could then make the decision that we're going to have a remote meeting. Or talking individually with someone and saying, like, you know, is it okay to just miss this meeting? You know, maybe on an individual basis, because some people are much more, care much more about being involved in the meeting, even if they're sick or something like that. But again, I would agree with Volley that the meetings that are hybrid are definitely hard with the flow. It's easier like this, or it's easier all online.
Any other thoughts? I see wheels turning. I think logistically, I agree that fully remote or fully in person is definitely easier to manage. You know, but I know that there are situations, you know, from my perspective, if one or two people can't make a meeting, and in all likelihood, it's not going remote. Like, those people would just miss the meeting. You know, if nobody can get here from Durham and Pownell because the road's flooded, then maybe that's, you know, when we're talking, then it's talking a matter of, you know, impact, right? Half the board can't make it. Okay, maybe that's a remote meeting. Yeah, we certainly need to have a quorum. So, you know, that's an option to just do fully remote or fully in person. But, you know, I do know that it seems like we've never had really an issue with attendance in our board meetings, right? People come to our meetings, but it has been a little tougher in the last year. So, you know, I know it's difficult sometimes with kids and families at home and parents, and it's just a little bit tougher. So I know it's difficult. Susanna.
Yes, also, I agree about the fluidity of the meetings, but that also requires more notice, I would presume, that if we were to go from being here to being remote, we need to clarify how the meeting is run in advance. So if somebody is sick or whatnot, that basically would just preclude them from attending all together. But, you know, I don't know, but I don't know how the timing would work and what the legal requirements are for notice, or whether it can be, you know, just a notice, as Cynthia said, about, you know, on the website where the meeting is going to be held.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a question for the lawyers of, you know, if we had to pivot from one to the other, you know, what's a reasonable amount of time? I mean, I know you're supposed to, you know, post meetings, I don't know, Ginny's screaming at her TV right now, 2 or 3 days. I don't know if she knows what it is.
I think we researched
We did ask, and,
Yeah.
and her answer, you know, we said, is it 1 day, is it 2 days? And she said it really is not an issue, just as early as practicable.
Right. I mean, I think, you know, sort of normally earliest practicable is a couple of days, but I know we've had to have emergency board meetings with 24 hours notice. Like, you can do it.
Right.
But what I don't know is if we have a regularly scheduled meeting that's properly noticed that we then have to go remote for,
Right.
is that considered re-noticing? And is that, you know, is there an issue with that? Or can we do it as you know, as early as practicable? I mean, I feel like that's probably fine. But it's a good point to, you know, what's the methodology if we're going to do that? How does it look? How do we make sure, you know, we get it out to as many people as possible? To one, have people participate from home if they want, and two, to make sure people don't show up, because that would be infuriating, I imagine, to someone who came to a board meeting and none of us were here. So, so I guess I'm interested in people's thoughts on, you know, keeping a hybrid option in here, or whether we want to go do the sort of all or nothing, you know, all remote or all in person. I could be swayed either way, but I think if we're going to do some kind of hybrid, I would like to see it tightened up in terms of when it could be utilized. Susanna.
I mean, I think I'm in favor of the hybrid on the understanding that attendance remotely is done when one would normally be here, but for reasons probably associated with COVID, that's not practical. And so, you know, with unexpected absence, I would clarify that to be related to health, not run off to a funeral, for example, which is also an unexpected absence and currently perfectly fine with this, or a sudden business trip that I didn't know about until, you know, that all is included. And I think that's a very different situation than I'm supposed to be quarantining for 2 weeks, or I have a sick family member, or I'm waiting a test, or whatever I want to say, because in those circumstances, I'd be here. And likewise, illness, if I'm quite sick with a fever of 106, I probably shouldn't be participating, whether I'm remotely or not.
Shouldn't be alive.
Yeah, so, thanks, Bob. I've only had 105 recently. Yeah, so I think, you know, that's quite different. If I have, you know, asymptomatic COVID, I'm not coming, but I'm alive.
And I feel like, you know, we had sort of language in it last year that was pretty much to that same spirit, right? On when people could attend remotely, and that was the rules we had in place through June 30. You know, were people comfortable with those criteria, and is there a way to have those carry forward, or?
Maybe we could look at those again?
Yes, that's a great idea. Maddie?
I kind of feel like I could be swayed either way too, but I'm trying to sort of project into the future and the landscape of people who are called to public service is shifting, I feel, not necessarily for the better. I'm fearful about that. And this work is a commitment. And I'm feeling like I would prefer a not hybrid option. I think I would prefer that you're called to the commitment and you keep the commitment. That's, I don't know if I'm making myself understood, but that's
No, I
the current
understand.
feeling.
I think I'm leaning a little bit towards that as well, like the either remote or like all or nothing. I guess I would just say, I mean, the remote participation, I think if we could just do the phone, then I'd be okay with that. If we were just like, oh yeah, somebody could call in, you know, but I think it is a lot to do the video technology and to have that all. So it's just, but I'd be fine with the all or nothing.
Okay. So is the direction we're giving the policy committee when they go back to revise this for second read to remove the hybrid option in this policy? Jen?
That would be how I'd feel. I like how Maddie phrased it. I would agree that it to make a commitment is a commitment. And I think you've said we have really good attendance, so I think that this board in particular could go with the all or nothing.
Susanna?
I think I would favor looking at regulation, tightening this up, because I think the same thing about making a commitment. It's also a commitment for me not to show up if I am waiting a test result as well. That's not saying that I'm not committed to public service. And I could interpret that the same way, you know, with the same method, that I'm choosing not to come because it's not safe for me to be here. That doesn't mean that I'm not committed to a mission. And that same thing is, that's not a business trip. That's an I would be here otherwise. Yep. And so maybe looking at how does that participation look like? Does that mean that that's a telephone? Figuring out what's the best technology? What are sort of how does that fit in? What are the regulations and circumstances in which such things could be used? Because I think the attendance, we're not having issues with people not being here. So I don't think we need to have that being very broad in terms of it needs to cover a bunch of things. But I do think that there could be cases in which we're precluding participation from people who would be otherwise participating. And I don't think that's a lack of commitment.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's the flip side to that same coin is, I think, you know, for all of us here, probably, it's really hard to miss a board meeting. Like, you know, I think I was in Michigan once and I was like, gosh, I'm missing a board meeting. This is killing me. And I was doing something way more fun, you know, at the, you know, with my kids. And so it is hard. I wouldn't have done a remote for that. But your point is, you know, I could be there. I could be productive if it were not for this, you know, test awaiting. And, you know, so it's hard because I can see that both sides. Maddie?
I just want to add context. I'm certainly not commenting on anyone who's currently in the position. I'm trying to project into the future that if we adopt a model of either or, that I'm concerned about the kinds of folks who might feel that, oh, then I could be on school board in that situation, and I could and I just doubt their ability to be as committed to the work. I'm not. Yeah.
Yeah, Jill.
To just build on what you're saying, I think, you know, to say that our board has good attendance, this is a policy that's going to outlive us. Being a new board member, you know, I missed the retreat because I had unexpected knee surgery. I think we have to recognize as human beings, we talk about self-care. Often we don't often do it. I mean, if you have a reason why you can't be here, that happens. And so I just think the remote option isn't ideal. If you're out for whatever reason, we're not judging that you're not wanting to be here. It's just that sometimes life happens. And if, you know, and then down the road, or whoever it is, if you're consistently not here, maybe the voters should recognize that and you would not be voted in for another term or whatever, because you're not
We actually do have a policy around that.
Yeah, I mean, or whatever, because you're not doing your job. So I'm leaning towards no hybrid option, because I think it's just, it's not a good way to have a meeting, in my personal opinion.
And I think it also eases the issue of the public participation piece, because if we're all remote, then their participation is remote. If we're all in person, then their participation is in person. I think it's very clean that way, and there's not a lot of, oh, geez, is somebody going to be remote? Could I possibly call in versus going? I mean, I think it's cleaner that way. But
When I read this policy, you know, I couldn't pick out what guaranteed them the right to be remote if just somebody on the board was remote. I couldn't see that, but the part about individuals with disabilities seeking a reasonable accommodation, I think that's important, because if you have if you have an impairment that you can't get here, then if they gave notice to let the superintendent know they had something to say, they could put it in writing, or they could, you know, do something in those lines. And I think that's very appropriate, which is different than somebody trying to zoom in from home during public comment.
And I think we have had people that have sent letters and asked us to read it during public comment in the past. I mean, I don't know if they did that, why they did that, but I feel like we've had that occurrence before. Vali?
I do like the telephone-only option, though, because then works around the technical issues and allows the public to participate. And I think the more convenient we make it for them, they're not the public servants that need to prove anything to anyone, the better off we'll be, because we'll get more feedback.
Specific to the public participation.
Right, public
not board
participation,
members.
either in person or by phone, for public, not for us.
Yeah. Maybe we can research a little bit how other districts have done that successfully to see if that's something we want to include. Susanna.
On another note, so this, if we don't have a remote participation, well, how does number 1 apply? Because this is saying that this policy applies to with the existence of an emergency or other issue that requires the board itself to meet via remote methods. And that's saying, is it not that this is under this policy? So would some other policy supersede this?
Say it one more time. Sorry.
So this policy is saying that circumstances in which physical presence for public meetings is not practical include 1, the existence of an emergency or some other issue that requires the board itself to be via remote methods. So that's saying that, such as the case in the spring, under this policy, without this policy, we couldn't meet remotely.
Correct.
So if we have some emergency, that means we're not meeting.
No, if we have this policy in place and just remove the hybrid option, then we have the ability to.
Okay.
So we'd still have a policy. It would just eliminate the the avenue of just one person being remote.
Okay, all
It
right.
would be an all or nothing remote policy.
Sorry, I misinterpreted that somehow.
But it will require some major rewriting. So
Yeah,
what
yeah.
we're reading here is super confusing.
Right.
And it probably will be gone next time we see it.
Yep. Okay. Remote participation, and I'm just trying to see if there was anything else. I mean, the other thing that I thought of, and if we only go remote versus virtual, then it may not matter. But that second to last paragraph on the second page, the board will make all documents and materials to be considered by the board available to members of the public who attend remotely to the same extent available in person. When we hand things out at meetings, people at home can't see it. So I think we just need to be really cognizant of that to try to, get everything out in the packages ahead of time, both for the board members as well as the members of the public who don't know what we're looking at when we're talking through things. So that just came to mind as I read that is, and if we are going to go fully remote, then we need to have an avenue of if there's anything being shared with us, then somehow it gets up on the website ASAP simultaneously. But I think the fact that we're all remote makes that less likely that there's going to be handouts, right? Because we're not all here. So, okay. Do we sufficiently butcher your policy? I'm sorry.
I think that's typical of a new policy anyway,
Yeah.
right? So I thank you for the feedback. It gives us a place to go having that discussion on the hybrid. All right, are we ready to move to the next one?
Sure.
Okay. So the next one, this is one that Melissa referenced that we needed to change because of a law change. So this is BEDH, public participation at board meetings. And if you look at right in the middle or a little bit further down, that time permitting members of the community may comment on other school-related matters. That was that was what she was talking about, because they can comment on other matters. But there's some stipulations around that. So if you look at that, let's see, I think it's in the paragraph above that. Okay, yes. So the paragraph that's underscored right in the middle, the board will designate a portion of its agenda as an opportunity for public participation. During that time allotted for public participation, members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of schools, except for personal matters. It should be personnel, no, that's right. It is personal. It is personal. Like yeah, it is personal. Sorry, it's like your own student. Personal matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, which shall be addressed through established policies and procedures. So there's the part that says may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the schools means it could be something that's not on the agenda. So those are the two areas to highlight. And then the last paragraph, there were a couple of things added at the very end. We also post it on the website, the meetings. And the last paragraph, it's an opportunity for public participation at board subcommittee meetings is not required, but may be permitted at the discretion of the subcommittee chair.
Do we have our agendas available at all the schools? I mean, I don't know if it's all that important, but we say we do here, so I was just curious if they do.
I think Ginny sends them to there's a list of places. I don't have them all in my head, but I know that.
I know she sends them to the towns and stuff like that. I just was surprised to see that it says it would be in each school.
Yeah.
But I guess as long as somebody in the school has the email, right? They can pull it up for them if somebody asked for it. Beth.
I just have it's a formatting thing, and I just didn't know if on the second page of this policy, is that top sentence supposed to have a separate?
No, it goes with D.
It does.
It's just where it's separated here.
Okay, that's all right. I couldn't tell just by reading it if it went with D or not. So thank you. Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome. We'll make sure it lines up better when Ginny actually posts it.
All right.
All right. And the next one, immunization of students. We chose to strike it out because there were several changes to this policy. So it's just, I shouldn't say several changes. The essence of it is the same, except that there's the addition of the, I gotta pronounce this, meningococcal. That's how you say it. Meningococcal. I know. I haven't said it like a million times to get it. That vaccine, that has been required for a while now, but we did not have it in policy. It is in law, so it has been being, enforced, but it wasn't reflected here. So that's at 7th and 12th grade. And then if you look at letter C in particular in the middle of the second page, as you know, on September 1st of this year, there are no longer immunization exemptions for religious or philosophical beliefs. So that replaced what was there before, which said they had to put, if you look at the other one, you can read through the strikeout from the former one that they had to put it in writing. So now this just is replacing that with the new law. And I don't know if there's any other questions that you have on this page.
Polly.
So the C that you just referred to, the one that we're adding about the no exemptions.
Yes.
I don't read that as a condition that needs to be met. So I would strike out the C and remove the indentation and make it a standalone sentence.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. We can fix that. You talked about that over there. Okay.
I guess I have a question.
Oh, yes.
We just received clarity from the state within the last 48 hours about that the licensed physician has to have a Maine certification. And I don't know whether that's worth putting in the policy or not. I would leave that up to the policy committee, but that is impacting a few of our families where they have received an exemption from a physician in another state.
Oh. Okay.
I think maybe one's from my home state. And that's no longer, I guess there's been clarity on that within the last 48 hours that they can be out of state if they also hold a Maine state license.
So a Maine licensed physician?
Yes.
We can make that adjustment to the policy. Thank you. Okay. And the last one is the communicable infectious diseases. So basically, and I should say that this policy that we just talked about and the one we're going to talk about, the nurses were involved in the discussion. So just to inform you of that prior to our policy committee meeting. And so with this last policy, again, we struck it out. The essence is the same. The second paragraph really was because if you look at the second paragraph above, it's all different department names. And so it just cleans all of that up. It's the CDC and all of those. They had the Bureau of Health in there and so forth. And then I don't think there's anything that stands out to me.
So I had a question reading through this.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little confused. So the paragraph that reads, students who have other types of communicable diseases shall be excluded. Other than what? Other types. So to me, that implies that there was another one that they had already talked about. So any student for whom the CDC has prescribed isolation or quarantine shall be excluded from school or school activities. Students who have other types of communicable diseases shall be excluded from school or school activities as prescribed by law. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm unclear what that reference is. What it's like, is there an example you could provide, like what it's talking about?
I mean, I think the way I'm reading it is if like if there's a whooping cough, right? And that there's an outbreak and there's that's a communicable disease and you get so many, then you have to notify parents. So I think of that maybe as that first one, right? And then maybe another communicable disease that should exclude a kid from school, even if there's not an outbreak. That's my interpretation, but I can get clarity on that.
I mean, does it make sense to just say students who have communicable diseases shall be excluded from school and school activities? Like, why are we identifying which ones are required to quarantine and which ones aren't? Like, if all of them are going to get bounced from activities, can we do it a different way? Or I don't know.
I wonder if it's just, there shouldn't be a space between that and the previous sentence, because it's talking about isolation and quarantine. So if we put them together, does it make more sense?
It still duplicates the shall be excluded from school and school activities. So maybe there's a way to combine them.
Yeah, but there are cases where we quarantine kids, especially COVID, who do not have the communicable disease. They just happen to be contacts. So maybe they're trying to make the distinction between being quarantined because you're a contact or whatever else, but you're not a carrier of the disease, and whether you actually have the disease yourself.
But the whole thing is about communicable
Yeah, it just
diseases.
doesn't say that. I mean, I agree with you, Michelle, and I just didn't know if that's just carried over from up, the top part that was struck out where it said that before. But it still doesn't, it doesn't make sense to me either. Why that would
I
be
can
there.
check into it. Yeah.
But I think it's important to include both scenarios, whether you're quarantining with the disease because you're a contact, and whether you're carrying the disease and need to be excluded as well.
And is there like a legal, definite? What's a communicable disease? I mean, clearly COVID, but what?
I
Like
think
chickenpox
there are particular ones that are listed. I don't know what those
Okay.
are. I know whooping cough is for sure.
Okay.
So, just on the very last paragraph, do we want to put something about a main physician, or does it matter for returning?
I think that's just the immunization. Yeah. That's just the medical exemption piece, yeah.
And a certificate can be interpreted as a doctor's note saying the student is no longer contagious? Is that what a certificate is?
I think so, right? I mean,
That's how
basically
I
it just
interpret
says
it.
that they can return to school, participate.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. We come across some fancy names from time to time. They don't even do embossing anymore.
So I was curious about the last sentence of that one. The building principal and or the nurse must give permission before the student can be readmitted. So do we have situations where the doctor provides a note and we still say no?
Concussion.
Maybe yes. I would say that could be possible.
I would hope not very frequently.
Just curious. I feel like it's in line with sort of the concussion protocol, right?
Yeah.
Like just because you have a note from your doctor doesn't mean we're gonna let him back in.
Let you back in the
We
game.
can be more restrictive than the doctor.
Right.
If we want to.
That'd be an interesting scenario to end up in court with, though.
As a parent, I have to say I would be very upset if I went to the doctor, got the note, came to the school, and the school told me,
No.
sorry, your child cannot come back.
Does that
So
seem more
something
like
to
it would be
consider.
they can't participate in the sports? They can come back to school.
No, this says they won't be readmitted to class.
And this is regarding communicable diseases, so it's
Yeah.
a whole different ballgame
Oh,
than
that's true.
concussions.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I was
good
just using
point.
that as an example of one where. What is?
Yes, a cold. You could technically have a cold, and that's a communicable disease, right? So do we need to define?
It says notifiable.
Yeah.
So I read that
Yeah,
as
that's
if
not on the
you've
list.
even-
All right, good.
Cold's not on
and
that
then,
list.
And then I would say, like when I read that last sentence, you need somebody to see the note. So I would say the nurse or the principal sees the note, and then they can go to school, because somebody needs to, needs to be the gatekeeper for the note.
Maybe. That's not how I read that sentence, but. who has a notifiable communicable disease may return.
It doesn't say it anywhere else.
Well, no.
Okay.
Nope.
We got this.
You guys didn't have anything to do on Friday, right?
We've got this.
I mean, I know she has 100 pages of new policies she wants you to do, but we got other stuff for you.
Finished all our work last year. Did you know that?
You may have told us that, which may have prompted our discussion.
No shortage of work, right?
All right, so so that's all of them. Yeah. So we need to do a vote on first read on these, even though we know we're going to modify them materially.
Correct.
Would you exclude the first one?
I feel like that one needs to come back for a first read again.
Which one? The
The
first,
first one, the remote participation.
Okay.
I think the other three. Yeah, that one, I mean, that one's pretty major. I think the last one is probably just some rewording for clarity.
Yeah, we're changing it essentially. We're changing the meaning of it, so
Yeah.
that makes sense that we would do first read again.
So we're gonna pull BED from the first read vote, and so that one will come back again later with a revision for another first read. But we will do a vote for BEDH, JLCB, and JLCC. So do I have a motion for consideration and approval of the first read for those policies? Susanna and Beth, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Great.
Thank you.
All right. Our favorite thing to talk about, the school calendar. Why'd you sit down, Cynthia? Isn't this you?
Well, I told her that I'm hoping it'll be quick, and so I.
Because that's our MO.
Okay, so I was going to bring this up at the retreat, but we kind of ran out of time. And so I would like to put forth for the board's consideration that we consider have it, so let's hope we don't have any snow days. But in case we do, the administrators discussed this, and we would like the first 3 snow days to be real snow days. Where it's just, I mean, we got some feedback last year during COVID when we were going to, we were all about student achievement, and we took the snow days away from the remote kids because there wasn't any reason why they couldn't keep learning. And I feel like, being from Texas, I stripped them of some childhood, something that they're owed, right? And so we had a discussion around this, and we felt like 3 snow days were adequate. And so we want you to consider that if we go beyond the 3 snow days, that we turn those into remote days. And if we do that, I think we end up, if we use the 3 snow days, I think then we end up with the last day of school. I figured that out. Thursday, something. No, thank you.
So Becky, one question. If the 4th day, after we got our 3 snow days, the 4th one is a huge storm where no one
wipe out
has
power,
internet
yeah.
access, or
Yeah.
then hopefully we make that up as another storm day, or what do we do?
You're thinking of a case where it would just wipe out the internet access.
Or power.
Right.
Well, which would, yeah.
And it's the 4th or 5th, and we can't do it remotely. Can we say,
Well,
well, in
right.
that case,
I mean,
then
I
we
think-
have
Yeah,
it
where
as a
where
4th or 5th?
available. Yeah.
Yeah, we're assuming that we can do a remote day. I think we would need to write the motion in that way or something. And if we felt like we couldn't do remote learning, because I think, the elementary principals may decide that we're better off without synchronous learning, for example, right? So it's going to kind of be up to the administrators to decide what kind of remote learning they provide.
Could we write the motion that it would be at your discretion after the 3rd snow day, so that you could take into account those considerations?
I'm not seeing a motion. for this?
No, I just kind of, I've been rewording it as you talked about those policies, so.
So here's my point is do we need a motion for this, or is this the general operation of the schools?
On the calendar?
That, I mean,
Yeah, well, and we had to vote for remote school days last year, I mean, snow days.
Oh, okay, well, we can do that. Or,
yeah, I mean,
Vote on it the next meeting, like talk about it now, have a motion next meeting?
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
it's not going to start snowing tomorrow.
I hope we won't.
So my question was, one of the reasons we sort of gave back those days last year was we didn't have to make them up.
Well, that's gone away.
Okay, that was my question.
Okay.
Okay, just to be sure. All right.
Yes, we're back to, requiring 175 school days.
All those rules. Okay.
And so just,
Yes, Jeremy.
You said you've talked about it with the administrators. Have the teachers been generally discussed with to see? Because I know in the past we had to, like, when we went remote, we had to take like that whole day or two for them to get ready to go back to remote. So just want to make sure the teachers are prepared and supportive too.
I think well, I shouldn't assume anything, right? But I think anything that keeps us from going into that next week, I think the teachers they were very supportive this year of getting out earlier in June.
But
we
could they
could definitely have, if we're
polled?
waiting for the vote until the next time, they could definitely put it out to the teachers just to get kind of a pulse,
Yep.
or at least the leadership teams.
Susanna.
Yeah, I'd second that because one other reason I think that we got pushback last year was that teachers were saying that if they're teaching and they have their kids at home, they now have their kids as well as teaching. And so I thought there was a lot of pushback that they weren't supportive of it necessarily because now they're supposed to be entertaining their 5-year-old while teaching other kids remotely. So I'd like that, how that's going to be structured. Where they stand on that as well.
Right, and maybe it's, similar to what Baxter does, which is they have storm packs that if there's a storm, you've already got it, and this is what you're going to do that day, and there's really not a lot of interaction with the teachers. Jen.
I think it was Maddie that said I would like the motion to say the first 3 days, like you said, and then the remainder of the days would be at the remote, but at the discretion of the superintendent, just to give that flexibility.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that, to Susanna's point, I think that we're talking about the difference between synchronous and remote learning. So I think the synchronous teaching for teachers who have kids at home is incredibly difficult. So, I would just ask that if I'm supportive of this idea. I would just ask that the administrators are very thoughtful about how they work with their staff in preparation for what this might look like, such that they have the flexibility to have their day be manageable.
And would it be possible to consider making the 4 first days actual snow days? Because then that would make the year end on a Friday. When I hear about just a pre-designed pack that the students have to do on a snow day, that doesn't sound like quality learning to me. So I would rather have them here in the school 4 days until the end of the week is Thursday or Friday of that last week won't make that much of a difference. I would definitely not carry it on to Monday. So for the Monday, yes, but the fewer days we can do that, the better. Meaning the remote learning, the better. Considering all the moving parts of the teachers when we have kids at home and then we end up giving students a pack and it's not very productive.
Jen.
I agree 100%. The only thing I think is hard with that is the last week of school is a full week of school. That's the only thing I would say is, and I'm assuming, would I be right that the last day is a half a day, correct? So you'd really be going 3 days and a half day versus 4 full days and then Friday is a half day, but that's just, you know, it's just another way to look at it.
I guess I'm comfortable with the 3 you recommended. But okay.
Thank you. We'll take it back for further discussion, and you'll probably see it on the agenda next time.
So sorry, but I had one more question.
Oh, yes.
Any possibility of moving the February 8th? No, what is that number?
4.
4 to the 18th?
Oh, and,
No?
Cynthia will speak to that. Now we're
I think there
really
was a
to the
reason, yeah.
calendar.
That's the PLD day.
Yeah.
It's already it's already planned. We have the PLD planned already for that day.
Specific day?
February 4th, yes, and March. We have a contract that we're for social studies, and those are the days that she's booked into her calendar. What's that?
She said February and March. They're both scheduled.
Both, yes, I know, but just saying they're all scheduled, all the PLDs. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought we approved it first and then we planned, but.
Well, you did approve
We did
this.
approve. This is the calendar we already approved.
Oh, so why are we reapproving it?
Well,
That was my point of why are we voting?
Well, because I'm
totally
making
confused.
it. Okay, so you did approve this, and it's been voted on. We've talked about it. But as it's currently written, it really doesn't allow for remote learning snow days. And so I felt like everyone is expecting that all the snow days will be snow days. And the administrators, I mean, other districts have done this kind of tweak, but we didn't think about it last spring when we were doing it.
Sorry, Cynthia. Oh, no. I almost gave you a heart attack.
You got a hard no from the crowd on that one. All right, so no personnel. Public comment? Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Lindsay, Susanna, thank you. All those in favor? Great, thank you guys.